The agenda never seems, so welcome to this meeting. Let me borrow your agenda, please.
All yours.
To the sixth meeting of fiscal 2014 of the Milton Planning Board. I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman. Why don't the other people here introduce themselves?
Ed Duffy, member.
Michael Kelly, member.
Bernie Lynch, member.
William Clark, planning director.
Emily Ennis, member.
Excellent. We're going to think about some past minutes. We've got the 22nd and the 12th, is that right?
Yes.
I've got some changes for the 22nd, which I think are pretty significant.
I think we might want to hold off on the 22nd.
And here is some, a few changes on the
Both.
12th.
You can put them all away then.
Let's hold off on those as well.
Okay. So we'll deal with those next time around. And we're going to need some more chairs probably, Bill. Do we have a chair cache somewhere? No. Oh. Well,
There's still a few there.
Yeah.
Just a few there.
Crouching
yeah, but
capacity.
forewarned is forearmed, something like that. We're going to meet again on the 10th.
I have a conflict on the 10th.
Really?
Yes.
So when do you want to meet?
I could meet the 9th.
You can meet tonight?
The 9th,
Oh. Wednesday, the 9th.
unless we've already got something publicized for the 10th.
How do people like Wednesday, the 9th?
I think it's okay with me. Wait, no, it's not okay. I think it's okay.
All right.
Hold on, please. I have a mess of changes. Wednesday the night's okay.
Okay. I was thinking yours, since they're after the next two, Eddie. Maybe
Let's
we can
meet on Wednesday, the 9th, because we never like to have a planning board member miss a meeting
Oh, wait till you see my list.
until November, except in November.
But we're going to meet
And
Wednesday the
December.
9th, P-Board.
Okay.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Now,
You want to do this mine later, Al? 'Cause it's just,
do what?
you want to do my dates later?
At the end of the
Like-
meeting.
Yeah, I think it's better at the end of the meeting.
Or we could do them on the 9th.
Well, it's extensive, so okay,
We might want advance notice,
You
yeah,
might want to do them.
it's a mess.
at the end
Oh,
of
you
tonight's
might want to do
meeting.
them now because
At
of
the end of the
the
meeting.
fact that if we have public hearings.
End of the
So
meeting.
when are, what's a good date for you? When do you leave?
You don't have to say specifically when you're leaving, just which dates.
All right, no, you don't have to say when you
didn't
leave,
pass
it's
these
just
out.
what
Right.
meetings
I
you
know.
might miss.
That's what I said.
Do we know when the meetings in November are?
No.
They're 2nd and 4th, so one of them would be Thanksgiving.
Right, the fourth is the one that you
Two of them, probably, no matter.
can't meet on anyways.
This one is in November.
Yeah,
The 4th is Thanksgiving.
right.
I suggest we do this afterwards.
So it'd be the 14th.
Give me one
Yeah, I
second.
think we should do it at the end of the
Yeah, do
meeting,
it
because
afterwards,
we've got a
yeah.
public hearing
Okay,
at 7,
Yeah.
and
All right.
we've got stuff to
So
do
put it
before
away.
then.
now we're
Dates that
going
Eddie's not going to
to
be here.
have citizens speak. And we have a number of things on the agenda. And one is the Women's Club, so we're not going to hear citizens speak about the Women's Club during Citizens Speak because we're going to have a public hearing and we want to hear people speak then. And we have a proposed subdivision on Blue Hill Avenue and a site plan approval of the Henry House, which is on Milton Hill, and so we don't want citizens to speak about them either.
Until the designated time.
Until the designated time. But if any citizen wants to speak about something else that you think is relevant to the planning board, feel free to come and speak. All right. No,
But you just said no one is to speak.
no
about-
women's club speaking.
Well, 3 of your board told me last night there was this meeting to speak for the women's club. That's what-
Free what?
The public hearing starts at 7 for the Milton's Women Club, so we'll be taking public
So you can
comments
speak
during the
then,
public
Janet.
hearing.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. Now we're going to turn the meeting over to Emily Innes, who is going to do some master planning.
Fair enough. So at the end of our last meeting, just to fill people in, we had interviews with the 3 consultants for the second phase of the master plan. We had a joint meeting with the master plan committee and the planning board. We'd pretty much ruled out the Brown Walker team, which left us with VHB and the community circle team. And we had some outstanding questions for both teams. So in the last 2 weeks, Bill has called references for both teams. He's also sent a request for information to both teams to ask them for 2 things. One, for the community circle team, any extra work samples, any work samples they wanted to send, because we had a question on their writing style and ability. And to both, he sent out a request for information on their low-tech, no-tech outreach systems. And you should have received by email or in your packet the information from both teams on that. So you'll have had a chance to review that. Bill, if you want to give us just a quick update on the references, whether there's anything bad you heard or anything good you heard. Obviously, I know you can't name the references specifically, but.
Sure. I called several references for both consultants. Everyone I spoke with gave favorable reviews to both groups. I spoke with some people that were on the reference list. I spoke to some people that I know that have dealt with people that weren't on the reference list but had good experiences or had experiences with both groups. Again, everyone stated that either group was capable of providing good service and a good product. I asked questions about who would go the extra mile, who could get to the technically challenged. They both came up positive on those. I asked if the partners were going to provide the same product as discussed in the interviews. In other words, are we going to get the same individuals that we saw? On the VHB one, we're going to get Angie Vincent. We're going to get their traffic people on, and we'll get RKG. We'll most likely get Judy Barrett. Going on the other side, you will get the 4 people that are listed in the plan. Daphne Politis, Angus Jennings, Jeff Maxtius, and Martha
Lyon.
Thank you. Martha Lyons does the landscape and historical preservation for Community Circle. I asked about the written product and the need for editing and oversight. And they both came back with either group is capable of it. Neither group needs a whole lot of editing and oversight. I did ask the question, big versus small. None of them made that an issue. It seems everybody had worked with VHB, whether it was at some point along the line, whether it was a transportation project or a planning project. They did feel that it was a big company. That, again, nobody came back with anything negative on any of them.
So as it stood at the last meeting, I think everybody had an opinion. Mike had asked me at the end if I heard anything from the master plan committee members to pass that on. I did get one email a day or 2 later from Mr. Cronin, who said that he would be happy with either VHB or Community Circle. And there was some discussion, right, as everybody was leaving among a few of the master plan committee members about Community Circle, but I haven't had anything else from anybody. So the question we would have is who we would like to have. I know after reviewing the materials we received, I know who I would like to have. I remember who each of you wanted to have from the last meeting, so the question is, are we still there? Did anybody have a change? Should I make a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Well, we have a motion on the table.
And was that completely withdrawn?
No, it was tabled.
It was
It
tabled.
was tabled, okay, that's what I
But
couldn't
I
remember.
don't know what you do with a tabled motion.
untable it.
Stole the words right out of my mouth.
Bring it off the sideboard and
You
place
can
it back in
bring it
front of
off,
us.
but the motion, of course, was subject to reference checks.
Right.
The reference checks have now been
Have been
checked.
done.
So if it comes off the table, we'd have to, presumably it's your motion, Ed, but remove the reference checks.
So do you want to keep that same motion, Ed?
I do.
Okay.
All right. And I did second that motion.
And just for clarity, the motion was to approve VHB as the preferred consultant. Okay.
Correct.
So
So in that case,
we're going to discuss it, right?
we are going to discuss it. Do either of you have anything you wanted to add to?
I'm not changing my vote.
I thought, between then and now, I had thought backing up a little bit on community circle relative to the fact that we didn't have a good experience previously, and maybe we needed to go with a bigger company, but in seeing what they've provided, and I think I'd still stick with them.
Well, my concern the last time was with Community Circle's ability to write, because we didn't have the work samples from them. I note that the Master Plan Committee was deeply concerned about making sure that we had enough of a community outreach to draw people in, to make sure that the plan that we have is one that has wide community support. And as I looked both at the materials we already had, as I reviewed the interviews, and as I looked at what we received in the past week, I do believe that the Community Solutions is the better group for that public outreach. I was satisfied with the quality of their writing. I didn't find anything that struck me as something that we as a group or the Master Plan Committee was going to have to do a lot of hand-holding on. And in fact, Martha Lyons, who we did not meet because she was out of town, I was very impressed with the quality of the writing and what they submitted on. In addition to the community outreach, a great deal of the visioning process identified open space and historic preservation as being strong values for the Milton community, and she would certainly address those. So I think I would join the three of you in supporting Community Solutions.
Two of us.
Well, sorry, the two of you, three of us in supporting Community Solutions.
So I actually graded the people, and I found that VHP got 21 points to 17 points for Community Circle. I'm very concerned. I don't think Community Circle has much depth of planning expertise, and I think that that is going to prove to be a detriment. I reviewed the Southbridge Master Plan, and I've got to say I thought it was extremely general and not particularly helpful. In my view, VHB was far and away the best company, and would, in my view, undoubtedly do the best job. So I will stick by my original. And I thought that VHP showed that they can do a nice job of outreach. And I thought that what was going on in Greenfield today, where they're going to have a sort of a community gathering.
I was sorry we couldn't make that. That did
Right,
look good.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw a picture of a tent that's a Community Circle. It was the same thing. It was, I didn't see that the depth of outreach offered by Community Circle was significantly greater than that offered by VHB, and VHB's depth of planning expertise is it just is so important because you can outreach as much as you want, but if you don't have a solid basis to outreach from, you're not going to it's not going to do you any good. So that was That's my view, and I will vote for VHP.
I will say that I believe that the members of the community circle team have significant planning background, going over many, many years of planning. So I don't see that
At a
they're
meeting happened, I can't talk.
not able to meet VHB on that.
Well, I think Mr. Hibb has some experience, but I don't think he has the depth of experience offered by VHB.
Wait, Mr. Who?
Angus, is it
Angus
Hibb?
Jennings?
Jennings.
Angus Jennings
Jennings.
has been a planner for quite some time.
I understand
Used to
that.
work with Bill.
I understand that.
Well, he worked with Bill at the very beginning of his
Yeah, Mass
career,
Area Planning
yes.
Council.
He was an assistant, or was he the planner in Marshfield?
I believe he was the planner in Marshfield.
But
I have to actually pull out the resume to be sure.
That, being the town planner in Marshfield doesn't seem to me to be a particular credential for
And-
being a master plan consultant.
And he's worked as a consultant as well.
No, he was also,
It just seems that VHP, I didn't think that, I mean, since he is going to be offering all the planning expertise, as far as I can tell, we've put all the eggs in one basket, and I think that the basket is not necessarily the best one.
Now, Ed, what were your thoughts on the two plans?
I found that Circle was more contrived. The presentation was contrived. One person would stop, the next person would automatically pick up and stop, pick up. It was all rehearsed.
But VHB did the same thing.
No, not to the extent that the Circle did. And that bothered me, that it was, as I say, sort of contrived. So I'm going to stick by my vote and stick with VHP.
All right. I had somebody ask me afterwards if, and this sounds mean, but it wasn't meant to be, they just wondered if you had mixed the two teams up because they had the exact opposite of impression from you had. So
Oh,
that's why I asked.
Okay.
So when that person comes back to me, they say,
Yep,
did
okay.
you ask Ed? So, well, there's a motion on the table.
Well, you're the person who has to deal with it.
My-
a vote.
Well, my question was, is there anything else that anybody wants to say before we move to the vote? All right, all those in favor of VHB as the planning team for the second phase of our master plan, please raise your hands. Against? I will make a motion for Community Circle as our preferred developer.
I'll second it.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor? Against? All right. Bill, if you will notify all three teams tomorrow, that would be great. And then get started on that contract. So once the contract is signed, we will be moving towards the first meeting of the master plan, and I'll get a schedule to you as soon as we have it. Thank you all very much.
All right.
Thank you for your efforts and keeping
Now-
all this together.
Thank
Thank you for giving me your agenda.
you. You're very welcome.
I think that we'll talk a little bit about the Henry House review because of the fact that we've got 10 minutes before the public hearing on the Women's Club starts. And what a,
The problem is Mr. Sullivan and Mr.
He's outside.
Sullivan.
I can see, I can,
Paul
Ron
and
Sullivan.
Oh,
Mr. Jim Sullivan
okay. Oh, Jim
and
Sullivan. No.
Mr. Corcoran are coming in. They expected to go on after the public hearing.
well, I mean, they can. The public hearing may go on for a while.
Okay.
And it does seem to me that we're not going to be acting on this. We're going to be getting a presentation on the Henry House today, but we're certainly not going to act on it today.
Want to go back to the schedule?
What?
Fill 10 minutes, want to go back to the schedule?
Oh, okay.
We have 10 minutes to fill, right?
Yeah.
Here's the problem. You see in November, I have the 7th, 8th, and 9th crossed out as not being available. That's because my aunt is going to be 99 on the 8th.
oh, that's fantastic.
And she's upstate New York, and I have to do it's quite a drive, about 5 hours up. She's in a convent up there. She's a Franciscan. So those 3 days will be travel days or actual birthday days. And then I got a very good airfare starting on the 11th through the 27th to go to the Emerald Isle. And so that takes 2 more Thursdays out of the mix, and the 28th is the 3rd Thursday out of the mix. So as it stands, I'm not available any Thursdays in November.
Yeah, but we could meet on the 6th.
We can meet on the 6th,
Yeah, we could.
Why don't we do that?
and have that as our
Well, let me
sole
just check.
meeting, and
Yeah. So the 6th is the, okay, this is going to work out then.
This is going to be really, really great.
Yeah. That's the-
We only meet once in November?
Great. Great.
we could
Okay,
do.
does that solve the whole thing, or do you want to add early December?
Well, I think that we might, but we're going to do that in
Okay.
November.
Yeah.
Okay, that solves it. for-
Because we could possibly, I mean, our normal meetings would be the 14th and the 21st, so we could do the 6th, and if we have sufficient business, we can meet again but not hold a public hearing.
Yep.
And if we don't, then we're good.
I'll take those back if you don't want to. I'll take them in case we need it again, to go through it all over again.
All right.
Ed, thank you for going away.
So we're meeting October 9th,
So we have nights
October
off.
24th, and November 6th, correct?
Over 9th,
9th,
October 9th,
Yep.
which is a
Ninth,
Wednesday,
okay.
24,
24,
Thursday, the
November.
24th,
and November 6th.
November 6th.
Wednesday, November 6th.
Okay.
thank you very much.
9th is a Wednesday too, right?
Because I prepared a nice
The
schedule
Wednesdays.
for you, it's worth.
Yes, the schedule is very helpful. Thank you, Ed.
I'll get confused when Wednesday shows up.
We'll be sitting here going, where's Mike?
That was easy.
Very easy. Now, we've got the Quistit Brook issue. If it is an issue, you're going to discuss that, right, Bill?
Oh, yeah.
You're the, apparently Quistit Brook has a condo in it where someone wants to develop an extra bedroom in a loft.
Okay.
There was a special permit granted for the condos at Quistit Brook. The original application in the first phase of development went through. There was a discussion about the number of bedrooms, and one of the reasons for approving this kind of a development would be limited number of bedrooms. They didn't go in and talk about the number of bedrooms per unit. There was a phase 2 to the project. Again, they said that everything from the previous development would carry over to the second one, and that again, number of bedrooms and the reason for this kind of development would be there would be less bedrooms, but there were no numbers of bedrooms in the decisions. So reading through all of the deeds, reading through the special permits, there's no numbers to those bedrooms. Number of bedrooms per unit,
Yeah.
so it's
Just
just.
the building
they-
inspector thing.
He punted back to planning board.
Okay, why don't we put the papers together, and we will give them our careful attention. Yes.
Have you reviewed the site, Bill?
Yes.
Is there any detriment to the neighborhood or to the character of the?
I think the issue is one, and the one that the building inspector kicked it over here for, was there is not right now a demand for more bedrooms in those units, but there could be. If one puts it in, then
we'll
somebody
just
may
open the
look
door.
at it and go, hey, that's a really good idea, I should have one of those. Now we'll have more bedrooms in X amount of units. And now they've changed the character of the building. The way that it was, the way the buildings are now, there are cathedral ceilings, and the idea here would be to put in a loft in one of those cathedral ceilings. And it was to put, the original proposal was to put in, and I think, yep, the people came right behind me, so please sit down. The idea was to put in a loft, not have to put in the wall. But once you put in the framing for the loft, you have the potential for another room. The issue was brought up by,
Bridget Waldbaum.
go ahead, you can explain, you own one of the units.
Yes, we live at 94 Parkwood Drive, Milton, and we own 2 powder mill at the Quistit Brook condominiums. In renovating this unit to rent to our dad, we submitted,
Is this your dad?
this is my father, Ed Powers, and my husband Barry, who co-owns the unit with me.
Chair?
And so we submitted for our building permit, and our loft became an issue we didn't expect. It was determined to be a bedroom, and at that time our plans were turned down, and so we're here to seek guidance on how to proceed. We do not want at all to try to get a second bedroom out of our unit at all. We want to make the best use of this beautiful lofted space. It can be storage, but it would also be terrific as a hobby loft. So we're here, and I just heard the tail end of what Bill was saying, and he absolutely presented what I would have said to you about the situation we're in right now, where there's the variance under which Quistit Brook was developed, but there's also the commitment to not add any more bedrooms into any of the units. And although what we don't want to have as a bedroom, right now it appears as a bedroom on our plans. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I think that we want to, I mean, this really is a decision of the building inspector, depending on what the permits say. I mean, if the permits don't forbid it, that would go a long way towards allowing it. But we've got to take a look at those, and we'll get them together, and we'll do so, and we'll offer an opinion.
Just out of curiosity, how are you finishing off the wall of the loft? Are you doing a, 3-foot height one, or you're finishing off at a solid wall?
If you were standing in the downstairs living room, and you looked up, you would see a railing
Okay.
leading into the loft space. And if you wanted to access that loft space, you would walk out of the living room and go up a set of stairs. Because we love this condominium and we want to maybe even downsize there one time ourselves, but we'll need to rent it in between now and then, I want a staircase that goes up to this storage space. Because using a pull-down ladder to put, say, a huge box of files up above the garage into the storage space is pretty awkward, and I could hurt myself. So I really love the idea of having a real staircase up to this loft area, and I love the idea of being able to put a desk up there, my sewing machine. But I do not want to even hint at trying to put another bedroom in there. I love it as a 1-bedroom, 1.5 bath. We do, on the plans, we did suggest that we put a bathroom up there. On the plans we submitted, there's a half bath, and that itself, I'm sure, lends to some of this confusion. But the town inspector was very kind. He completely understands what we're trying to do. And we completely understand how he came to his decision, and he invited us to, go ahead if you'd like and go through the appeals process, because that is part of how we look more closely at things that don't quite fit the code as it exists today. So we can do that. Our first choice was to just come here and get your impression on this, because you've had experience with this in the past, I'm sure. But we are up against a deadline now, because the letter that I received was from 8:30. I now do have a deadline of tomorrow to submit an appeal.
This is from the building inspector?
Yes.
And what did the building inspector say, Bill?
We can get that letter extended.
All right.
Great.
We're going to extend,
Okay.
it's going to be extended, and we'll take a look at this, and we'll discuss it at our next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And it's now 7 o'clock, and thank you.
Thank you.
We're having, we have an application for a definitive subdivision to be located at 90 Beechdale Road. We have a definitive subdivision plan. The applicant is John Morrill. The owner is the Milton Women's Club. The engineer is Mackenzie Engineering Group. And who is here to present the plans? Where should they set that easel up? Over there behind you, Bernie?
Yeah, because that camera can get it.
I think Bill Clark is looking for more chairs.
You look familiar.
And we might as well tell you that you're being televised and recorded.
Okay. Tell me when you're ready and I'll.
When you're ready,
Okay.
we're going to be ready to go. Okay. It looks like you're ready. Why don't you introduce yourselves and then tell us what you want to do.
Okay, I'm John Morrill, and I'm the applicant to develop 90 Reedsdale Road. With me is Paul Sullivan, who's my consultant on the project, and Scott Henderson, sorry, blank under pressure, who's the engineer who's working on this, and who has designed the plan. Thank you for viewing our plan. I'd like to, and thank you for allowing me a few moments to speak tonight. I'd like to give some background on the project because there's a lot of emotion about the Women's Club, and it's a building that a lot of people have spent time in and are attached to. And so I'd like to spend a few moments talking about the building and the process that we went through to get to where we are tonight. The Women's Club was built in the 1930s, and from all reports, it was once a vibrant and exciting place to be. It was well attended and well maintained. But over time, with age and lifestyle changes, the club has become less attended and has fallen into disrepair. It would need extensive renovations in order to continue its use as that type of building, as a function hall or any type of facility like that. It's also a non-conforming use. The zoning, which has been in effect since the 1930s, cites the appropriate use for this land as residential. Since the building needs so much attention and the cost would be so great, the Women's Club made the decision that it was time to sell the property. They first tried to donate the club to the town of Milton to be used for some other purpose. The town rejected this proposal at town meeting. It was determined that in an environment of scarce resources, it would not make sense for the town to make the necessary expenditures to renovate and repurchase the club. Since the town would not accept the donation of the property, the Women's Club then looked to fulfill their charitable mission by selling the property. The benefits from the sale would be used to fund scholarships into perpetuity for the young women of Milton. I entered into an agreement to purchase the Women's Club after it was marketed for some period of time, once they knew they wanted to sell it. So when I heard about it, my first thought was it's an old building and it would be an interesting project and it would be exciting to consider turning it into condominiums. So I investigated that. One of the major issues with doing that, however, was the permitting time for turning it into condos would be extensive. I understand that would have had to go through town meeting, and the Women's Club was not willing to wait that long to close. They wanted a shorter time frame to close, and they were eager to get the deal done. I also looked at it on a financial basis, and I have some of the background there. I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but the building is 6,000 square feet, and I submitted 2 letters to the board from one who's a developer of historic properties and the other who is a contractor. And it was estimated that to remodel the building and turn it into condos and do everything necessary, like removing the asbestos, making the building ADA compliant, installing sprinklers, doing the extensive plumbing, electrical, structural changes required, making the energy efficiency improvements, including windows and doors, re-siding, re-roofing, and of course reconfiguring the entire building for residential use would cost a minimum of $250 a square foot, times 6,000 is $1,500,000. That works out to $375,000 per condo unit for a 1,400 square foot unit, and that doesn't include any other costs, like buying the site or putting in a parking lot or carrying costs or legal fees or design fees or anything else. So it's cost prohibitive to turn the building into condos, and it is also time prohibitive based on the time frame that the Women's Club wanted to be under. So I determined that the only feasible option for the site, since the zoning was residential, C, was to turn it into house lots. Initially, the town had provided some information to the Women's Club that as many as 6 house lots could be created on the property. I consulted with an engineer who determined that 4 lots could fit on the site. The minimum of number of lots required to make the project economically feasible is 4 lots. My consultant, Mr. Sullivan, scheduled a meeting for me to meet at the Women's Club with interested neighbors and affected neighbors. This meeting, the first meeting, was attended by about 25 neighbors. The people attending universally supported the idea of having residential housing there. Not to say there aren't people who may disagree, but no one who has attended any meeting that we've had has disagreed with the idea of turning it into a residential home. Single family, single family homes. They expressed their concerns about the development, the drainage issues that are on site, and other issues, fencing, privacy, lighting, all of those things. And we listened carefully at that meeting, and we promised to get back to them at a subsequent meeting to discuss what plan we had come up with and present that to them prior to being here tonight. But the primary concern for the lot is drainage, as you know. And everything on our plan is driven by resolving or addressing the drainage issues. The soil conditions allow water to run to a low spot in the backyards of the Lantern Lane neighbors. And this is the low spot in here, this 83 contour. And so we had to address that. There are also concerns about privacy and fencing, construction noise disruption, the styles of the home and lighting. And we agreed to address all those issues to the best of our ability. And at this meeting, Paul and I also gave our email addresses and cell phone numbers to all of the neighbors and said if there were any issues that they had that came up, that we'd be glad to meet with them individually. And many of the neighbors took us up on that, and we made ourselves available to address all of their concerns and issues. We had in excess of 10 meetings altogether with the neighbors. Most of those meetings were with the Lantern Lane neighbors who are most affected by this because they have a lot of water in their backyards. Finally, we mailed to every owner on the Towns of Butter list an invitation to attend a meeting before our meeting here tonight. That meeting took place last Thursday, 1 week ago. It occurred at the Women's Club and was also well attended. There were many questions, but no opposition to the plan. Everybody was in agreement that they like the plan, they want single-family homes there. So I guess to conclude that part of the conversation that we're having here tonight, I've done my best to involve all of the neighbors and listen to all of the feedback, positive and negative. There has been very little negative feedback, really none. And we've addressed the concerns as we've gone, and we've made ourselves available to listen to whoever wants to talk about it. The plan that you see here contains 4 lots, all of which conform to the present zoning law. There are 2 overriding factors in the development of the plan. First, the drainage issue that impacts the Lantern Lane neighbors. It has driven the design from the beginning. Secondly, because of that drainage issue, there are premium site costs here, and to make the project economically viable, there must be 4 lots. Site costs on the property are very high. They include off-site easements to connect to the town drainage system, underground water storage cells, a long structural wall with fencing and landscaping, multiple rain gardens in the front of each home. Sewer connections require extensive grinder ejector pumps to work with the topographical features. It's premium site costs here. Plus, we have the cost of raising the building, which has been estimated at $66,000, and there's asbestos in the building which must be removed. And that does not factor in that cost. So because of these very high costs, the development requires 4 lots to be economically viable. And now I'll turn it over to Scott Henderson, and he can talk about the engineering behind our plan.
My name is Scott Henderson with McKenzie Engineering Group. I'm going to apologize in advance to those who can't see the plan as I present.
Now, let's make sure that you're talking into a microphone where you can
Get that right there.
be heard.
Project as best I can. All right. As the applicant stated, the proposal is a 4-lot subdivision at 90 Reedsdale Road, the site of the existing Milton Women's Club. We'll start with some existing conditions information. The existing site is approximately 1.02 acres with 150 feet of frontage along Reedsdale Road. It's located within a residential C zoning district. It's abutted on all sides by single-family residences. There's an existing 6,700 square foot building located toward the front of the site with a bituminous concrete turnaround driveway and small lawn area located between the building and the road. The remainder of the site in the back is heavily wooded with large mature trees with fairly extensive undergrowth. Within that wooded area, there are also several deadfall trees and large specimen trees that are in poor condition and diseased. As far as topography goes, the site slopes downhill from the frontage of Reedsdale Road toward the rear of the site, with grades averaging between 5 and 8%. The low point for the entire neighborhood is basically the low point in the backyard of 29 Lantern Lane. The overall watershed that's tributary to that point is about 4 acres, of which we are about 25% of that. We did conduct soil evaluation on the site. We tested 7 deep test holes. The parent material on the site is a sandy loam with high silt content. It's very dense, poor percolation rate, and that's consistent with the SCS hydrologic soil group classification as a C soil with high runoff potential, not much infiltration potential. And we did observe seasonal high groundwater across the site within approximately 2 feet of existing grade. With that,
Below existing grade.
below existing grade. Then 24 inches of the surface, we got most soil modeling. As far as the proposed subdivision, we're proposing a 240 linear foot, 35 foot wide right-of-way, terminating at a cul-de-sac at the rear of the property. That provides frontage to 4 7,500 square foot lots with 75 feet of frontage as required by zoning regulations. The right-of-way is perpendicular to Reedsdale Road and almost directly opposite Walnut Street where it enters Reedsdale. Within the right-of-way, we're proposing an 18-foot wide paved roadway terminating at a 65-foot diameter paved cul-de-sac. The houses will access that roadway via bituminous concrete driveways. Proposed grading for the subdivision, our goal was to substantially match existing topography. The proposed site will slope downhill from the frontage to the rear of the site. At the rear of the site, we will need to raise grade about 5 or 6 feet above existing grade, necessitating a retaining wall that runs along the north edge of the property and around most of the rear. I'll get into more detail about that later. As far as utilities go, we're proposing an 8-inch water main connected to the existing main in Reedsdale Road with typical services to each house. Electric and gas service will run underneath the roadway. Those will be coordinated with the applicable utility companies. In terms of sanitary sewer, that's a little more complicated. Lot 1, we're able to connect the house to the existing main in Reedsdale Road via gravity. Lots 2 through 4, however, are far enough below Reedsdale Road that they require ejector pumps. We had a discussion with DPW and engineering with Joe and John, and what they would like to see and what we've proposed are grinder ejector pumps, typical E1 systems that you see in applications like this, with a common force main proposed in the right-of-way. That force main will discharge to a new sewer manhole located at the beginning of the proposed roadway, and that will be connected to the existing main and reach their road via gravity. That's their preference. And to the most important part of this project, which John mentioned, is driving the majority of the design, is drainage. It's been an issue that we've brought up and discussed with the neighbors extensively, with DPW and engineering in multiple informal meetings, and the peer review engineer will be reviewing the drainage design for the project. As John mentioned, as I mentioned before, the low point for this neighborhood is in the backyard of the Langley property at 29 Lantern Lane. This area back here, the overall watershed draining to that area is 4 acres, and even in small storms, he's experienced ponding and flooding in his backyard. In larger storms, it's been very extensive, entering into the walkout basement in his house. We are required by regulations through the Milton Stormwater Bylaw and DEP Stormwater Management Regulations to ensure that in the post-development condition, we don't increase peak runoff rates and volumes leaving the site. We just have to meet existing condition. Not only are we going to satisfy those requirements, we'd like to, the best of our ability, try and improve the drainage problems that those abutters are experiencing now. There is an existing drain line running from the rear of the Langley property to the municipal system in Lantern Lane, and there's an area drain connected to that in the backyard. That pipe is functioning fairly poorly. It's an 8-inch vitrified clay pipe. It's fairly old. There's root infiltration, and portions of it are likely collapsed. It's clearly not functioning as an 8-inch pipe, and it's running at approximately 0.5% slope, which isn't adequate to actively drain that backyard. So for prolonged periods of time in large rainstorms, the water is detained in his backyard up to 2 or 3 days that we've heard from him. Which brings us to what we've proposed for drainage. The first point is the roadway and proposed impervious surfaces, the driveways for each lot. The site's graded such that they will drain into a series of bioretention cells that we've proposed along the south side of the roadway. These generally offer twofold benefit. One, they treat stormwater runoff. The extensive plantings within those bioretention cells remove total suspended solids, phosphates, nitrates, things of that nature. We are designing them in concordance with DEP stormwater management regulations. They generally also provide an infiltration credit, although in this scenario with such poor existing soil, they don't provide much infiltration. And we can only provide that to the maximum extent practicable, being the existing conditions are so poor. In larger storms, there are overflows from these cells to downhill cells, and eventually they'll discharge into a detention basin proposed at the rear of the property, or rear of the subdivision rather. This is where we need to provide that 5 or 6 feet of fill over existing grade. In order to provide enough detention volume for us to detain water in a closed environment within the subdivision and slowly release it through an overflow pipe connected to the Lantern Lane municipal system, we need to raise that end of the site. Because groundwater is so high, essentially the bottom of that detention basin needs to be at existing grade or higher. So that's what we're proposing. We've discussed with DPW and engineering this proposed connection to the municipal system, and they're amicable to it. That is the topic that we are working out with them, and that the input of the review engineer will be part of the final design of that connection. That connection is going to be made across an existing easement on the 25 Lantern Lane property. There's an existing sanitary sewer easement that the Women's Club had used in the past that has subsequently been abandoned, and the homeowner is amicable to modifying that easement to accommodate this new drainage connection to the municipal system in Lantern Lane. Also included in our stormwater management proposal are roof dry wells for each of the proposed houses. They are about 1,000 gallons each and will fill up fairly quickly. As I stated before, because the infiltration rates in the site are fairly poor, these will fill up fairly quickly. They will not drain very quickly, but they will provide the required infiltration volume per the stormwater bylaw and stormwater management regulations. In larger storms, when they're full, the roof leaders will overflow into the backyard and sheet flow across the rear yards, as the current condition is to the low point at the rear of that lot. So what's pivotal to this project are several waivers that we're requesting from the subdivision regulations. In order to minimize the impact and the extent of the development, there are several waivers that we're requesting. The first one is reduction in required right-of-way width. The requirement is 50 feet. We're proposing a 35-foot right-of-way. This allows us to geometrically create zoning compliant lots for 4 houses. As John stated, that's economically pivotal to making the project work. Also, that goes along with that is reduction in the required cul-de-sac radius. We're also proposing reduced pavement width within the roadway. The typical cross-section is 24 feet. We're proposing 18 feet. The reason for this is that the roadway is fairly short, and there's limited traffic produced, that the roadway doesn't need to be 24 feet wide, and by reducing impervious area as much as possible, we can adequately address drainage issues. The requirement for sidewalks on both sides of the roadway, we're requesting a waiver from that that goes along the same lines as reducing the pavement width. There's only 4 houses. Trip generation on this roadway is going to be minimal, and reducing the amount of impervious area associated with the subdivision will allow us to address drainage adequately. If we did need to propose a sidewalk along the south side of the roadway, it would consume the majority of the volume proposed in these bioretention cells, and that's more or less a deal breaker in terms of making the drainage work. There's no way that we can address the abutters flooding issues if that's required. The required drainage easement width per the subdivision regulations is 20 feet. We're proposing a 10-foot wide easement on that property. The 20-foot easement wouldn't adequately fit between the 2 existing houses, and a 10-foot wide easement is adequate to install and maintain the proposed drain line. Last, the final waiver requested are offsets for street jogs. The minimum street jog requirement is 150 feet. Otherwise, proposed roadway center lines need to be lined up exactly on opposite sides of a roadway. We're proposing that the center line of the new right-of-way be about 15 feet offset from the Walnut Street center line. We cannot move the roadway any farther south and still create that 4th lot that's necessary to make the project financially feasible. From the proposed curb cut, the sight line to Walnut Street is adequate. People pulling out from both those roadways will be able to see each other. And generally, it's the traffic safety issue that necessitates that street jog requirement, and there shouldn't be an issue with that here. So that concludes the presentation for the proposed subdivision. We can now field questions from the board and or butters.
Mr. President, what's the topography here? Is this land lower than this land, or?
No, the topography along Canton Avenue here generally slopes downhill toward 29 Lantern Lane. So the existing house here is about the same grade as this first lot is going to be, and they slope downhill, sort of sweeping down toward that abutting line.
So what type of impact would any water draining, because you're probably going to change these grades, so.
The grading of the rear yards is substantially the same as the existing condition. We're going to maintain topography such that runoff will drain down toward the rear of the site along the backyards of the proposed houses. These lots are not downhill, so no water is going to drain off the site onto their yard, which is also the existing condition. So we are maintaining that substantially.
Will the water accumulate here?
The water will accumulate still, any water that runs off in the backyards of
That's the
all
existing
of these
condition,
lots
that's
in the
right,
existing
okay.
addition will still drain to the rear yard, 29 Lantern Lane. The volume and rate of water that runs off into the backyard is significantly less in the post-development condition than the existing condition. I believe we're reducing rates by about 37% and volumes by a magnitude of approximately 20% in the 100-year storm.
The 5 or 6 feet you say you're going to build up against the retaining wall, where does that start, where does that elevation start increasing?
Going up. So we start the retaining wall along the north side of the proposed roadway right here. At this point, it's approximately 1 to 2 feet tall and continues steadily down toward this corner where the proposed wall is about 5 feet tall. As it turns this corner, it maintains about a 5-foot visible height to about 4.5 feet at this corner, continues at 4.5 feet to this corner, and then truncates at this proposed house. This house will be a walkout from the basement to substantially to existing grade.
You said that the backyards will match existing grade as close as possible.
More or less.
Do the front yards, my question was, will the front yards match existing grade, and where does it begin to slope up to meet the retaining wall?
Well, it continues down at approximately 4.5% grade downhill the whole way. The existing site is somewhere between 5 or 8%, so we're still sloping downhill the entire way.
So
to
it's
here.
gradually coming up a little bit in the
Gradually
front
coming
yards?
up, exactly. So we're at existing grade here, and we're 5 feet above it here, and it's a steady increase.
So there's no
above existing
drastic
grade.
slope up at the end?
No,
It
there's no
slowly gets
slope up, it continues down.
The retaining basins in the front yards, is it a storm scepter system? Is that,
These?
yes?
No, these are just open basins there. We have pictures of those. See some of the landscaping here. It's basically a depression.
Like a
that-
weir?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no physical shell or anything under there to open up and retain the water?
No, no. It's just the existing soil is excavated. I'll pass this around. This is a picture of a bioretention cell that we just designed and was constructed in Watertown. It's basically just a depression that stores water temporarily. There's an area drain that acts as an overflow outlet for each one. So water will collect in those cells. The vegetation, mulch, the grass that's in there will absorb and treat suspended solids and pollutants from the runoff. And only in larger storms will you see that overflow utilized, where it will flow downhill through the bioretention cells.
It's not like a dry well, it doesn't have stone or anything, or filter fabric under the
There's
loom?
the cross section of it. You excavate down to about 2 feet above seasonal high groundwater. Put 6 inches of stone, filter fabric, a series of sands, loamy sands, and planting
So you will
soil.
retain some of the water in the stone and the filter
Yes, yeah,
fabric, and
there's-
that's where it'll overflow to the...
Storage volume there. We don't account for that storage volume in that media. We only account for the void space at the surface that's stored in the depression. So
Who maintains the ecosystem that you're creating?
this will be maintained as a private road, which I think John can speak to a little bit more. There'll be a homeowners association and an operations and maintenance plan, part of that stormwater system that they're required to
Maintain those three, yeah.
Exactly. We are proposing a drainage easement that'll run along these front yards, consuming the area where these detention basins are located, so that will be an easement where they have to maintain them as designed.
This is, how deep is this, 85 and?
It's approximately 4 feet deep.
You gonna have a
4.5
fence
feet deep.
around it, or?
And it's not a very steep depression. We prefer not to put a fence around it.
Water's gonna stay there for a period of time, you know, attractive nuisance.
Yeah, it may. I mean, in a larger storm that will fill up, water will immediately discharge through the outlet control structure here into the municipal system. It's not going to be detained for
Is it gonna
2 or
be
3
pumped out or
days.
gravity?
Gravity.
What's the construction of what you call the outlet control structure? Is that a manhole?
It's a precast concrete unit. It's 4 feet square. It's about 3.5 feet tall in this case, and there are engineered outlets, V-shaped, V-notch weirs that control flow rate based on how much volume's in the detention basin, how quickly we have to release it to make sure it doesn't.
You don't expect much water to weep through the retaining wall?
No, no water. There'll be
Is the retaining wall solid concrete, or is it?
It will have to be poured structural concrete. There'll be an impermeable barrier between the detention basin and
So
the
there'll be no
wall.
weep holes through the concrete?
There will have to be weep holes in the
Pressure.
subdrain, there typically are, but water from the detention basin is not gonna percolate through the fill soil and out those weep holes.
You just said you're going to put an impermeable material against the,
Exactly, there'll be a barrier between the edge of this and the wall. Those are typically used, say, with septic systems where you have breakout
Clay.
condition. You could use an impermeable surface soil if you wanted to, but we would prefer to use it's a 40 mil EPDM barrier just between the detention basin and the wall. Now that ensures that none of this water, like you said, percolates through the wall and sort of bypasses the whole system altogether. So.
Now, you show the 35-foot layout, and we do have a 50-foot requirement, but then you point out you're going to have a drainage easement coming along, so basically, with the easement, the roadway easement and the drainage easement, you're going to get up to 50 feet, so that makes the waiver easier to do. You have an 18-foot pavement and currently a 35-foot right-of-way, and I don't see where the roadway is. Is it right in the middle?
This shaded area here, this is the roadway.
Okay, it's along the side.
Yes, it is.
And if you put a sidewalk, say, going up to the third driveway with a pervious surface within the right-of-way, would that impact you?
Yes. The reason for that is that in order to accommodate a sidewalk, we would have to grade up from the edge of the roadway to that sidewalk. Currently, we're proposing that the road is super elevated such that it drains down to the south side of the roadway, so any runoff will drain into these bioretention cells. If we have to grade up here for a sidewalk, we will have to put in a closed drainage system. Those consume much more volume, much more vertical area because you need separation from grates to pipe inverts and things of that nature. It would essentially consume the available volume we have in these front yards to detain and store water in those bioretention cells.
Just because you built it up.
Yes, so the roadway slopes down into all of these, and if we have to raise grade here, then those aren't feasible.
And putting it on the other side of the street would be how about that?
It's the same scenario, more or less. To accommodate that, we would have to move the roadway down. By moving the roadway down, we would therefore be consuming some of these areas for the bioretention cells. Along with that, if we were to try and expand the right-of-way to shift the road down to the south, we'd be pushing the building envelopes farther and farther towards this property line. As it is, the building envelopes for these lots are fairly constrained because they are fairly small.
And those are the building envelopes?
The building envelopes are somewhat difficult to see on this plan. They're more readily seen on.
Okay, but you have them
layout plan.
specified.
Yes, we do.
And you have the fence is going to be, you specified it here in your wall is going to be stone covered.
Yes, there's been extensive discussions with the neighbors. There's some varying and strong opinions about what the wall should look like, what type and make of the fence should be. But that's something that they're all working out. It's more or less their decision. Because it's a poured concrete wall, you can face it with a facade. There are various facades that you can use.
Right, but how is that going to, that's going to be worked out, but it's going to be worked out.
Yes,
You can
It's
expose
going to
the
be work-
aggregate too, you know.
could. Yeah. I mean, there are various options.
I mean, presumably, we're going to want to know what it is.
When that conclusion's made, you'll certainly know what it is. I don't believe at this point that conclusion has been made.
I mean, it's my understanding that there is a certain time pressure on this subdivision, is that right?
Yes.
And what is the time pressure?
John?
Looks like used concrete sidewalk. See it?
So we're going to meet on October 9th, which is Wednesday.
I think they're the same, Eddie.
And presumably, if we were to approve this, we could sign a decision then on the 9th. But we would want to know, I mean, we don't want a lot of loose ends,
Sidewalk.
like
No sidewalk.
how the wall is going to be
Thought he said-
covered.
When it was 2, but they're going to have 1.
Because these things do tend to, closure is good.
I agree.
One clarification. How many sidewalks?
Are we proposing?
Yes.
No,
None, okay.
none, no sidewalks.
And it's going to be a private way,
Private way?
so the plowing is not going to be done by the town, it's going to be done by the
Homeowners
association.
Association will have a contracted landscaper to do that.
What about just going back to sidewalks, what about not super elevating it, but just having something at grade?
Sheet flow across. I mean, that's not ideal. You know, it's the same scenario where it's space that we need for stormwater management that we'd be consuming. If you have a sidewalk, you need at least a 3-foot tree lawn. To have anything less than that, it'll get torn up and won't be maintained well. It's very difficult to maintain anything less than that width. 4-foot sidewalk, about a foot or two of level grade from that, and then grade down at a 3-to-1 into these cells. You essentially have to push them right up to the face of the houses, which isn't feasible to do. You know, with 4 single-family homes in a subdivision, your peak trip generation in the afternoon and morning will be 4 trips. It's about a trip per house.
How many bedrooms?
Generally. I think these are 3 or 4 bedroom houses.
They're going to be roughly 22 to
I'm just thinking of cars.
2-car garages.
2-car garages.
Attached to the house? Just out of curiosity. Yep.
And with no curve in a roadway, there's no sight line issues if you were to have somebody walking down the road and whatnot. It just seems more appropriate to take as much surface area as possible on the lot and address it and use it for stormwater management to help the neighbors as best we can.
You've been talking about drainage mostly for rainstorms, where you've got everything coming at once. What are you doing about snow, and more particularly snow storage? How does that work?
Snow storage, you know, when the road is going to be plowed, snow storage is basically going to be along this edge of the roadway and at the end of the cul-de-sac. There is limited space for snow storage. I believe part of the homeowners association decision will be, requirements rather, will be that if there's an excessive amount of snow, like we had last year, it'll have to be trucked off-site. There's no other option. We can't reasonably design for 4 or 5 feet of snow if we reach that point. But there will be adequate snow storage for, you know, typical storms, a few inches, things like that.
And landscaping, is that the landscaping plan there?
This is not the official landscaping plan that's being worked out at the moment. We're kind of waiting on, you know, revisions driven by this meeting. This does reflect a lot of the landscaping that's going to be proposed. There are some large specimen trees existing, one specific tree here that will be retained, some large trees along the south side of the property that will also be retained. The majority of large trees down here will have to be removed because of the grading, but part of the landscaping is going to include the bioretention cells, some perennial landscaping along the north side of the roadway that won't be destroyed, can be used as an area for snow storage in the winter. And there'll be various plantings around the property. I think you guys are looking at a draft landscape plan.
This is the draft.
That is a draft, yes.
This is draft. And in any event, when if we're going to sign a decision approving the landscaping plan on the 9th, it should be distributed and given to the town planner.
It will be officially submitted with a final set of plans for it.
Right, but it just should be, hopefully by sometime
Prior to the night.
next week.
It will be.
Okay. Now,
Just one other question, Alex. The abutters here, how is the lay of the land? Is any of this water now going up to this site?
No, it's similar to the existing topography on our site. Basically, along the entire frontage of Reedsdale Road.
Do you have a
in this
topographical?
stretch. I don't have a.
Well, before, yeah,
I
I'd
had
want
a-
to see that before I vote on this.
I could bring to the next meeting a town GIS map printed out that shows the topography.
Your surveyor didn't do it?
Well, the GIS has actually been flown in 2012, and it's fairly accurate. It almost exactly coincides with what we've surveyed on our property.
Doesn't some engineer have to put his house on the line? Can they use?
We have topography that was surveyed with a field survey on our property and along these properties, but
Yeah, existing.
on the abutting properties, shows it there. These abutters, from the roadway, from Reedsdale Road down to the rear of the property, it slopes pretty steadily in this direction. At this point, it starts to sweep around toward this low point, and then these houses along Canton Avenue, same deal. They sort of drain down this direction and then sweep around to a low point here. So there's minimal, if any, there's no water from these abutters running onto our property and vice versa. Nothing substantial.
Well, you've got that retaining wall with the weep holes and.
And this
What's the
retaining
groundwater
wall-
on this lot? Have you ascertained that?
We didn't do soil testing there. We can't do soil testing on other people's
Because
properties.
if you say it's 2 feet here,
It's likely 2 feet there. And it's generally, within.
and the wall is 5 feet high, so the wall is gonna penetrate down where that water table is, and it could, those weep holes could be weeping.
Those weep holes will be above groundwater elevation. Those weep holes will be exposed at existing grade on the downhill side of the wall. So if
okay,
groundwater's
2 feet,
2
right.
feet below,
Yeah.
then the weep holes will be above. The weep holes only serve to drain water that builds up from the
Behind.
surface down behind the wall. In this case, because we're grading everything down in this direction, away from this side of the wall, those weep holes will very rarely, if ever, exhibit any flow.
Let's hope the groundwater on this is the same as this. I mean, sometimes the groundwater
I
differs.
presume it is, but this being the low point here for the entire neighborhood, it was about 2 feet below grade here. As we got to the front of the site, as the grade rose to the frontage here, I think the test hole up here was about 32 inches below existing
I
grade.
thought I
So-
saw a couple up here. Was the plan, you had a plan up here that showed a couple of.
Yeah,
The
we-
reason I say this, I do a lot of Title V stuff. And I've seen water tables here at a certain elevation, and then I've seen 15 or 20 or 30 feet away, the water table is different.
Exactly.
So
I mean, that is the
I would-
case.
I would hope that this is not going to weep through, and so maybe if we could get some readings up here where the water table is.
I mean,
It's on someone else's land, but
because this property is going to be raised higher than that, there's no way that the water table from these lots can have any impact on our lot in terms of breaking out. Because we're higher here, if groundwater is below grade here, it's going to be well below finished grade underneath this roadway, so that'll never be.
well, I haven't seen the plans yet, so, okay.
What I think you described before is you're coming back on the road, on your side of the retaining wall versus the other side of the retaining wall, you'll be elevating where they'll be staying at
Existing
a lower grade
yeah.
or existing grade.
On the bottom of the wall along the north edge of the property line, we need to maintain existing grade. We can't change anything on abutting properties. So.
You're going to have drains at the base of the wall, yeah?
On the downhill side?
Yeah.
No, because the existing topography lends for runoff to run in this direction and around the wall. Any runoff that comes from this site after the development is finished is going to exhibit the same behavior as it does now. In the current condition, it flows downhill around the corner and into these backyards, and it will maintain that
your plans, do you show the grades carried into the adjoining lots?
Yes, we meet existing grade along the adjoining lot, and our
But
survey
I'd be able to see
included,
the lines?
yes, our
Okay.
survey included a
Okay.
15-foot overlap on abutting lots, is generally what we show.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of waivers here. I don't think they need any waivers at all. I think all they need to do, sidewalk is already in, the road is in, the sewer is in, and so forth. All you need to do is to eliminate 2 houses, put 2 houses out on Reedsdale Road. You get 75-foot of frontage, water pipes, sidewalks are in, everything's in, ready to go. Don't need any waivers. And I think it'd be much more pleasing to the neighborhood to have it like that, where they're not worried about these very intricate designs to keep water out of the area. I don't think you have to go through that at all. Just put the 2 houses out in Reedsdale Road, and you don't need any waivers.
Well, you're just saying, buy the women's club and
Suggesting
build 2 houses.
Form A lots here.
Exactly.
2 Form A lots.
Yep, and the neighbors would be satisfied, I think.
All right, well, let's see what you have to say about that.
Well, I don't think that works financially. I sure wouldn't buy it and close on it under that scenario, based on what I have to pay and the engineering costs. B, that would not improve the drainage for the land and lane neighbors, and it would continue to exacerbate the problems that they have. And what the most likely outcome of that would be, my guess is that the women's club would reject a residential proposal and would instead sell the building for use, for some institutional use, like a church. And that is not what the neighbors want. So I mean, the neighbors can speak to that, but my guess is that's what would occur, because I would have no interest, the lots would end up costing, each house lot $400,000, and I don't think a lot on Reedsdale Road is worth $400,000. So I wouldn't close. I wouldn't buy it under that scenario. So it would have to be someone else.
You've said earlier that approximately 4 acres drains to the low
To
point.
this low point, yes.
In the area that you have constitutes about 25% of that.
1 acre, yes.
So your intention and claim is that you'll improve that situation. So at best is a 25% improvement.
More or less. So, yeah, I would say
Somewhat less, because you're going to
somewhat
see
less, some of
some
it. In larger storms, you are going to see runoff from our site still continue.
to the back. Yep, there you go, in the backyard. So
But
12.5%.
more or less what ponds here now, we're detaining in a controlled environment within the subdivision limits and bypassing those yards by connecting it directly into municipal system.
So there'd be some improvement.
Yes.
But that's also in the worst possible scenario, right? I mean, the 100-year storm, that's what happens, but
Yeah.
the 3-year, 5-year storms.
Smaller storms, you see a much more marked improvement because there's little to no overflow from our site, and say a 2-year storm, it's merely the larger storms that become the most difficult.
No, I'm not being argumentative, but the best you're going to see is a 25% improvement, because the other 3 acres and even a portion of your land is still drained there. But
Yes.
All right, so you have in mind, we're going to get some comments on this. Does the board have other questions? But if you have in mind, the right-of-way 35 feet, how wide is the sewer easement going to be?
The drain easement, the proposed drain
Yeah,
easement.
the
back
drain
here,
easement.
10
No,
feet.
no, the drain easement along the road.
For the
Incorporated the
bioretention
Oh, for the bioretention cells?
Yeah.
That would be 20 feet wide.
Okay, so that would basically bring it out to 55 feet, which is perfect. 18 foot rather than 30 feet, I thought was our model width, Bill. Is it 24?
I may have misspoken.
It doesn't matter. You want to waive it down to 18 feet.
The travel way is 18 feet. The travel way is 18
I understand, but I think that the
15 less than that.
usual setup is, what?
24.
Okay. I thought it was 30. That's what they did on Heather Drive, I think. the street jog, the 10-foot easement rather than 20 feet. You're going to, yes?
That is a historic right-of-way now that exists on 10 feet, which is why they stuck with the 10 feet.
Okay, so we'll,
So it's
in other words,
existing.
you're saying it may be a grandfathered,
I
well,
believe that's why the homeowner is agreeing to it, because it already exists as a 10-foot.
well, we still could waive it.
You could,
Yes.
but he wouldn't
Just
like
make it
that.
perfectly. Oh,
Well,
but you would like the waiver.
No, they
allowing us to
would.
waive- Yeah.
Waive it down to 10.
Waiving it to 10,
Yes,
you would
waiving
like,
it to
yes.
10.
Let me,
Yes.
let me clarify the easement width. The overall width of the proposed easement, or the drain easement, is going to be 7 feet wide on the Healy property and 3 feet on the Balfour property.
And is that existing?
No, the existing easement is 5 feet wide on the Healy property in its entirety.
So
It's being
Okay.
I
expanded to
think
10.
So we're expanding to 10.
it's a waiver.
Yeah.
Okay, I think those are the waivers. There
sidewalks.
is, you've got a hydrant, we're going to deal with, the street lights are going to be, what I propose is, you locate where they're going to go, you install them, the homeowners can pay the electric bill.
Sidewalks, we're waiving the sidewalks.
And sidewalks, another waiver.
What kind of streetlights are you looking at?
Rustic street
Something
lights.
very quaint.
I was gonna say LED.
Gas lights.
Gas lanterns.
Gas,
They're
gas
they're
lights.
paying for
Gas
them, so they
lights,
probably want
absolutely.
LEDs.
Well, I think that, I mean, we know that people want an appropriate street light
Residential,
for a lane,
yes.
and,
Yeah.
Can we see that for the next?
Yes,
right, they're
add
going
that
to,
the,
they will have a street light location and,
details.
and a
What a-
proposed fixture.
Just to comment on that, the neighbors are not particularly excited about there being extensive lighting since, you know, it kind of, the street does go in the backyards of some of those houses.
But that's
So-
why you get to design it.
Right, so we'll put in post lights, but they'll be low and try to minimize light the road with
Shielded.
minimal impact to the neighbors, is what the plan is.
Okay, I think that's right. And that would probably require some sort of a waiver, but maybe not, just an approval,
Yes,
perhaps.
approval.
Okay, so that's where we are now. Who would like to say something about this proposal? Yes.
For a citizen speak?
No, this is a public hearing.
Okay.
And we are going to make a decision on this application for a definitive subdivision. And people in support of it can speak in support of it, and people who are not in support of it can speak not in support of it.
Okay, thanks.
And introduce yourself.
I will. Greetings. My name is Vicki McCarthy, Youth Councilor Emeritus for the town of Milton. I'm here this evening to implore you to deny waivers to the entrepreneur and builder who proposed to develop the property at 90 Reedsdale Road, home of the Milton Women's Club. Quote, "for the public good," end quote. We believe that this development, and I refer to your rules and regulations, S.4.4, overall impact, would be detrimental to the town of Milton. We believe that another proposal would serve the town of Milton in a more beneficial way. We represent 137 years of service, conservative estimate, to the town of Milton through the Milton Junior Women's Club, the PM Club, which was the Milton Women's Club Evening Division, and the Milton Women's Club Incorporated. After having received the property at 90 Reedsdale Road, formerly White Street, for $1 in 1931, we feel that it would be just to return the property to its original state, green space, if no other nonprofit were interested in purchasing it. Please do not allow a few individuals to profit by granting them waivers on very important rules and regulations that you have under your jurisdiction. We recently have concluded the celebration of our 350th anniversary. We will soon be celebrating the 100th anniversary of Cranes Park in East Milton. Let's look forward to a celebration of the dedication of a legacy of the Milton Women's Club at 90 Reedsdale Road. Respectfully submitted, Vicki McCarthy, representing the focus group of the Milton Women's Club. Thank you.
And what is the focus group?
It's a committee that was formed when we were told that our property had been sold. And we are all members of the Women's Club, and as members of the Women's Club are part of the corporation, and so we would like to make our feelings known.
Okay. How many of you are there?
Well, the focus group is 10 members. That's, our bylaw calls for 10 members to form a committee, and that's what we did. As of last Monday, which was the first board meeting of the Milton Women's Club for this year, there's 35 members of the Milton Women's Club, so we constitute a quarter now of the Milton Women's
No.
Club.
You suggest there's an alternative, but
Yes.
you'd have to pay for it because we heard that it would cost $64,000 to tear down the building, and then presumably you would put in landscaping because a graded lot would not be so great.
True, yes,
So
and-
you would probably need $150,000, $200,000.
That's right.
And the women's club would get nothing.
Right. And the 35 members don't need anything anymore, really.
But, I mean, the focus group, this may be okay with the focus group. Is it okay with the corporation?
Well, we brought our concerns to the corporation initially. When I first brought them, I was told to shut up and sit down. So there's some difficulties there. And of course, those are internal matters, and I know probably not of concern to you. That's why we thought we would at least.
Well, I mean, but you as the focus group
Yes.
are saying, don't give these waivers because we don't want this subdivision to go ahead because we think the women's club should do something else with the property. But presumably, in fact, legally, the developer needs to have a interest in the land to come forward with the subdivision. And I am told that he, in fact, has a purchase and sales agreement.
And go.
The attorney for the Milton Women's Club is here. He'd like to speak.
Okay, well, after, this will segue into the attorney for the women's club.
Okay, excellent, because Mr. Harnais did meet with our focus group, so he's aware of.
Okay, what else? Anything else? Other questions for the, no, I mean, other people are going to get to talk. We may, other members of the focus group are perfectly welcome to talk. We're going to hear from the attorney next, and then we're going to hear, anyone who wants to say something is going to be heard. Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks.
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, and through you, members of the board, my name is Bob Harnais. I'm an attorney. I was actually contacted by Milton Women's Club approximately a year and a half ago. They came into me for two reasons. They knew the land. They were financially strapped, so they had to sell the property. They came seeking my advice. Being chairman of a planning board myself, they sought out some advice what they could do. As we all know, these fraternal organizations, unfortunately, are dying out. And that's historically, we have Sons of Italy's closing, selling off properties. It's happening. Milton Women's Club at this point cannot afford to keep that building going. They can't afford the construction needed. They can't afford to put on the roof that it needs right now. They barely got insurance. And the insurance just lapsed. They finally got it back on. This was an emotional decision for the officers. I know and meet with them many, many times in regards to what they're going to do. They don't do this lightly. They do this out of necessity. They do that because financially right now they can't survive. There was a vote taken, and albeit, a vote was not taken by the whole organization at that time when they first started initiation. and to initiate the process. The consulting with the officers, a letter went out to all members, and all members met at the, I believe it was a neighborhood club, if I recall correctly, and they all voted, and the vote was, the majority vote was to sell the property, and that's what they went ahead to do. They did sign a P&S. It is actually signed. I can understand, the people that have spoken, they are emotionally wrapped up with it, and I don't blame them. It's a beautiful building. It was a great organization. But financially right now, just like other fraternal organizations, they cannot afford to maintain that building. Now, we discussed the fact of giving, I think at one point prior to my involvement, the town of Milton was offered the building, and the town of Milton could not take the building. And my understanding was because of the financial problem we have with the building. Milton Women's Club in the same position. Their obligation is now to get the most money possible because it is a nonprofit for the benefit of the corporation, for the nonprofit, and that's what they've done. But again, I want to emphasize that a vote was taken. This was not done in a like fashion. It was, they did, I think, misstep in the beginning by not having the whole vote by the membership. They finally did have it, and the vote was to sell the property. But again, it's an emotional decision for them, unfortunately. But at this point, they have to do it.
But is the focus group a committee in your view?
Oh, absolutely. The focus, absolutely. And I cannot tell you that they don't bring up emotionally valid points. But that's what they are, emotionally valid points. They're not financially. It does not make sense for the Milton Women's Club to either maintain the property because they don't have the money, or it doesn't make sense for an organization that's been in existence for so long not to sell the property, have the money. My understanding is they have arrangements as to where they can meet and use that money in furtherance of the reference in the past for the community here.
Well, how long could they hold on, assuming that this deal went away?
They wouldn't be holding on too much longer. The insurance barely got passed right now because of the condition of the building. The insurance almost, I believe, and please don't, I'm not quite sure, I think it was May that they had to renew the insurance, and I'm not quite sure of the exact month, but I know they were having troubles because of the condition of the roof and the condition of the property. So I don't imagine right now, as a matter of fact, they don't have any more functions going on there because also an insurance issue. So that's one of the problems they have. So I don't believe they survive any longer financially with that building.
Okay. Questions? No, we're going to, once we're done, we'll take more public comment. But you have a question for the attorney. Okay, what's the question?
Was the property ever put on the open market?
No, it was never listed at all. The property was never listed. What they did do is send out word that they were willing to sell it. And at one point there was and I myself was involved, there was a proposal by, I forget the name of the temple, to purchase the property. It came down much less than what they thought the value was. And they sought it, at that point, that sale didn't go through. That no further negotiation, Temple made it clear to me in my speaking to them that they couldn't go up higher. Some time went by, and again, they sought out anybody that was interested. A couple of people that come forward. One individual came forward, gave an astronomical price, but there was in research in the back, and again, in my experiences on the planning board, I looked at the history. It wasn't viable. They weren't going to do it. So we went to the next highest one, and that was this one.
All right, and you consider it to be a fair price?
I do consider it to be a fair price.
Okay. Other questions for the attorney? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Who else wants to be heard? Yes.
Hi, my name is Janet Christensen. I'm a lifelong resident of the town, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Is it proper to comment on the last statement made by the attorney?
Yeah, it's proper.
Well, the second proposal was not far less than the first proposal of money, is the word. I'm not in real estate, so I don't know the right words, but it was not far less. It was second less, and the assistant treasurer of the club said at the time that that proposal on the table was the second in line, so something happened to this proposal. But as a lifelong resident, I think I join many opposing the destruction of the clubhouse. The thought of raising one more historic building for profit should be a serious concern for our planning board. We need a new plan to see that the clubhouse property is used for civic, educational uses, and town benefit. Preservation is a higher goal than profit. This is a building which has welcomed civic groups in town for years. Its membership has offered many benefits to residents, schools, library, hospital, high school grads. The Women's Auxiliary has operated to assist in past world wars. Many residents in the town would be able to donate to this cause. In 1902, 26 residents purchased land for the Milton Public Library on Canton Ave. That is one example. Many residents today would respond to the need to develop this land and property for better use by all town residents. We believe we need to develop a new plan to raise funding for the restoration of the clubhouse building. However, if the funds do not cover the restoration costs, our group further proposes the funds raised be used to take down the building and develop the Mary Webster Park to honor the first president of the Women's Club in 1898. The park would be a garden respite, next page, to honor their early and recent contributions to the schools and many other Milton needs and causes. And the park can also honor the brave Milton citizens who, since the founding of our town, have served their country in the armed services to defend our safety and democracy. We believe the restoration of the building or the use of the land as a commemorative park would in fact be a fine addition to the current possibilities under consideration in the town plan process underway. Milton is a very historic town. Let's preserve our landmarks. Thank you very much.
Now, a question.
Okay.
Presumably, this is a matter that the Women's Club could have voted on. And if they had wanted to create a park, they could have voted to create a park.
That topic was never discussed.
But
It's a new idea.
it could have been discussed.
But it was not.
I mean, it may be a new idea, but it's an idea that has been brought forth after the Women's Club has signed a purchase and sales agreement. And I mean, what you're asking, as I see it, is for the planning board to sort of take the position of the board of directors of the Milton Women's Club and decide what should become of the site, rather than do what we do, which is to wait for an applicant and consider an application on its merits. But we don't dictate what we think is best for a site. We consider what has been applied for.
But the planning board also should represent views of townspeople, your elected officials, to higher officials in the town, perhaps the Board of Selectmen. We feel that you, as a planning board for the town, my sister is president of her Women's Club in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and planning boards there are important boards that can have opinions, attitudes, consciences, whatever the word would be. But if we're not coming to the right town body, then maybe we should go to another.
Well, we've heard the proposal, but it is what's known as an 11th hour proposal. I mean, it would seem to me that this is a proposal that could have been made a long time ago.
We had too short a notice to make a proposal a long time ago. We were informed in a letter in the mail that the building had been sold.
But there was a meeting of the Women's Club, was there not?
Yes.
After the fact, but they reaffirmed the sale, did they not? By a vote of the members?
You know, I think it should be known.
Oh, what?
Wait a minute, I can answer that. Would you say again?
the attorney said that there was a vote by the membership to sell the building, and it may have been a confirmatory vote, but it was a vote, and that everyone was notified, and that, you know, the club voted by a majority to sell the building.
This is true, but we feel maybe we're a higher conscience of the Women's Club, but we are not backing down. I'd put money on, I'll give you $1,000 to start a park. That's how strongly I feel about it.
Okay. Now, well, no,
No, it's
you
one at a time.
you can, we're going to, people will get a second crack at things, but we're going to hear the people who haven't had a chance first. Okay, we hear you. Thanks.
Okay.
Who else wants to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
I hate speaking in front of people, so excuse me. Good evening, Chairman Whiteside, members of the Planning Board. My name is Bonnie Healy. Not only am I a member of the Women's Club, but I'm also an abutter and one of those most impacted by what happens to the Women's Club land. While I believe the politics of the Women's Club shouldn't need to be aired in front of the Planning Board, I'm not a Milton Women's Club board member, and I can't speak for the membership, but I can speak from my own experience. And I must say, I received a notice of a special meeting called by the Women's Club to vote on the sale of the property to the developer, John Morrow. The meeting was held adhering to Robert's rules, paper ballots were given out, ample time was given to various members to speak, votes were cast, paper votes were cast, and the overwhelming majority voted to sell the property to the developer. I'll be sad to see the clubhouse go. I made many friends in the Junior Women's Club. In my early days, 30 to 40 years ago, we had enough members to have endless fundraisers. We were able to give out scholarships, make donations to local charities, etc. I went on to that certain age and joined the PM Club. When it became defunct, I became a member of what had been referred to as the day division. Now it's called the Women's Club. That membership sadly has dwindled to about 50 people, of which maybe 20 or 30 come to meetings. Unburdened by costs of running the clubhouse, the members of the Milton Women's Club should be able to continue that tradition of donating time and monies that the club has been known for. Times change, so must we. So much for my Women's Club hat. Now, speaking as a direct abutter, I must say I am, as I believe the neighbors are, in favor of homes on this lot of land. Keep in mind, this is a small, closely clustered residential neighborhood, which includes approximately 10 direct adjacent abutters, and we are one of them, that surround the Women's Club on 3 sides. Over the years, we have been subjected to noise when the clubhouse was rented out to various groups. Also, it is my understanding that parking has at times been a problem for residents on Reedsdale Road and the top of Thompson Lane. I realize the members of the focus group are very civic-minded individuals, but after a great deal of thought, I find their ideas impractical for this close parcel of land. Trying to rehab the Women's Club building could be cost prohibitive to any civic, commercial, or religious group, and they would undoubtedly need to have a parking lot, which for abutters would be the worst possible scenario. The property runs downhill, and an asphalt parking lot would exacerbate an already existing significant water problem, to say nothing about lighting, noise, air quality problems caused by cars using a lot surrounded by homes on 3 sides. Another suggested use was a park. This would mean the cost to, I guess, the town of taking down the Women's Club and the old dead trees behind it for a park, which would also need maintenance and policing. I respect the other members of the focus group for their civic-minded ideas, but practically speaking, I feel the development of residential properties on this piece of land is the best use for it. I will always have my memories of the clubhouse, but the Women's Club will continue to exist, and meetings, I believe, will be starting in October in the library. I think John Morrill and Paul Sullivan have done an outstanding amount of work already in studying ways to develop this site, and particularly in dealing with drainage issues. They have given us, the neighbors, a great deal of their time. I think and hope the people living in the 4 new houses will enjoy the neighborhood and its block parties, Halloween parades, St. Patrick's Day dances, and the just all-around concern we have for one another that has made our neighborhood one of the most desirable in the town. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Who else? Yes, sir.
I feel like the second or third act right now. Good evening, Chairman Whiteside, members of the board. Oh, and Mr. Clark. My name is Bob Healy, my wife Bonnie, and I live at 25 Lantern Lane, directly behind and directly abutting the Women's Club property. We, along with Ken Langley and the Jollies on one side of us, and the Balfs and Ericksons on the other side, make up the lowest points of the downhill sloping of the Women's Club property from Reedsdale Road. As a result, we are the direct recipients of the significant water flow and drainage that comes from that property during weather events. Therefore, as I'm sure you can understand, the major concern for us with this project is that of drainage and flooding, and any use of the property that would exacerbate this problem. During these past several months, we have been meeting and working closely with the developers, John Morrill and Paul Sullivan, and their engineering consultant, who spoke so well in this presentation, on many aspects of the project. And I want to say, from our perspective, that's Bonnie and I, the developers have been going out of their way to be fully cooperative, transparent, and most helpful during our discussions of the many details involved and in responding to our numerous questions and requests, not only regarding the water control problems, but also other important issues such as the drainage and access easements that will run through our and the Balf's property, the retaining wall, the suggested waivers, the right-of-way, the snow management, fencing, lighting, landscaping, et cetera, that you've already heard. And I can say these discussions in all these areas are ongoing and open and appear to be progressing satisfactorily between the developers and us. The Milton Women's Club property is essentially, you've already heard this, I know, but I just want to repeat it, surrounded by approximately 10 directly abutting homes and other very close ones that are nearly directly abutting. And it is in a small, closely knit neighborhood of homes that are in turn situated very close to each other. In other words, a dense, compact neighborhood. The Milton Women's Club property is like fitting a piece in a jigsaw puzzle that would enhance and complete the entire picture. Therefore, it seems to us that a residential development of homes will be the best fit, especially one that would be constructed with state-of-the-art engineering technology that you've already heard so well presented, and that has the aesthetic concerns of all the abutters fully in mind. Thank you.
Now, you've reviewed this plan, I gather.
We've been reviewing it,
help develop this plan.
On an ongoing basis with so many meetings and discussions and all with John and Paul and the engineer. Yes, it feels like we're sort of part of it. That's why I mentioned every one of those aspects that you've already seen.
But you support it?
Yes.
You agree with what they're proposing and you support it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who else wants to be heard?
I guess you get me again.
Good evening. My name is Michael Balfe. I live at 19 Lantern Lane, which is right next door to the Healy's and right downstream, so to speak, from the Women's Club. Between them, John and Bob and Bonnie have really stolen most of my thunder. I again would stress that I have, as John said, that in many meetings, including some prior to John's appearance before us, everybody, I have not heard anybody come down for other than in favor of residential development of the site. We think it's appropriate for the reasons that have already been said. I think the reason for that needs to be clarified a bit. We really see three alternatives to this site immediately behind our houses. One is a residential proposal. Two is nothing, which will mean, in our opinion, in all likelihood, watching a large, frankly from the back, rather ugly building fall down in front of us. And three is some kind of institutional development, which we would oppose, and if it were to somehow revive its head, we would oppose actively in front of this board and elsewhere because of the problems resulting from putting a parking lot behind it, lighting, runoff, noise, etc. Particularly if it were a religious institution subject to the Dover Amendment, when I guess this planning board might not have jurisdiction. I'm not sure how stormwater and so on would be enforced, but there would be a lot less regulation, let's put it that way, which would be to our detriment. I would say to John that we would have also objected strongly to a condo development of the site for the same reasons. And we'd also object to a park because that will have many of the same problems too. I'm not sure if we'd be able to object to a town park, but we'd certainly try, or I would. So we regard residential as the best use, not just for the area, but also for us, particularly when John, this plan will hopefully actually improve the drainage in the back of our houses. We've had a lot of input into the aesthetics, which I'll come back to. So as I said, John and Paul have worked with us many times, as he said. We've worked with this, and it really has succeeded to pretty much all our requests. My understanding is that on the design of the wall, we do have agreement. We may have agreement on the fence, but I don't know, but John may know the answer. Do we have agreement on the fence?
I haven't had all the votes in.
Okay. We developed a voting system for the most immediately affected abutters, which I'm not going to see the votes. Only John's getting them. John and Paul are getting them. In addition to that, again, John, you correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is you've agreed you're going to landscape with shrubs of some kind along the, I guess, the northern side of the road, in between the fence and the road.
Right, according to that plan. Yes.
Right, and you're also going to provide some landscaping along the base of the wall.
On the low side of the wall.
On the low side of the wall to the abutters, which is something he doesn't need to do.
Right, and you're going to get to see the landscape plan.
Right, but I'm just trying to address your point,
Right.
that should be on the landscape plan.
Right.
And that's
Exactly,
agreed
and I
to.
think that they're taking notes.
Right. And in view of the other thing that he's doing, which, again, correct me if I'm wrong, which he doesn't have to do, is improving this existing drain, which doesn't work. Right, on Ken Langley's property. Yeah, right, that one. These are things he doesn't have to do.
Well,
So-
he wants a waiver.
Well, so, no, I'm saying, therefore,
Right.
I would encourage the board to consider this when deciding whether to grant him a waiver.
Oh, I see. He
Right,
doesn't
that-
have to do them, and you should.
These things are of
consider
more
doing-
value to us
Yeah.
than a sidewalk, for example. And therefore, we think, if you're going to say horse trading or whatever you want to call it, it makes sense for us that he spend money on this rather than on a sidewalk, which really, frankly, is of no value to us and probably of little value to the people who buy these houses. That being said, I mean, there's one issue which I think we have, and then maybe others, is it's not marked on that plan. One of the plans that marks the snow storage area. Given the narrowness of that strip and the fact that we have plantings and then a fence, I'm not sure that's going to hold very much snow.
Right here?
No, along the edge of the road.
Along the edge.
Yes. I think probably needs to be all pushed down to the bottom.
But you bear in mind that it's a 35-foot right-of-way, so that the right-of-way, there will be room on the edge of the right-of-way.
But it's, the room on the left, on the wall side, on the fence side or wall side, whatever you want to call it, the top on this plan, is very limited, and there will be shrubs in there. So there's not a lot of room there to put snow.
Well, okay, I'm sure the engineer will have an answer.
I'm hoping.
Trucking off the site, it's expensive, but
right.
If you have
Well, I mean,
multiple
replacing the
storms.
planting every spring would be a significant homeowner's expense.
Right, exactly. Anyway, so that's really the only remaining issue. I think on the design stuff, we apparently will have agreement, hopefully in time for the final plan for 2 weeks from today. The other things which I'm sure you will put in I guess not the permit, the approval would, and I've talked about these before, hours of work. I mean,
You would want a construction management plan. We could provide for that.
Right. I mean, I'm sure you
probably wouldn't negotiate it within the next 2 weeks, but we would have a provision that there must be a construction management plan with neighborhood representatives.
Right. Yeah, it's. I'm sure it's something you've done before.
Yes.
And the other thing, which again, I'm a lawyer, so as I told my clients since I'm semi-retired, that lawyers always have to think of the worst outcome, regardless of how nice people are being to each other. Is that there'll be some in the construction plan? There'll be some requirement that even if the building of the houses is phased in, which is, I believe, John's intent, all the stuff, infrastructure for landscaping and walls and fences must be put in before any occupancy permit is for the first house, or some milestone like that, so that we aren't left behind. I don't think we're going to. I trust John, but I'm trained to think that way. And that, I think, is about it, since people have took most of my thunder. Thank you very much.
All right, now, what do you have to say about the comment that plowing snow is going to wipe out all the landscaping?
The landscaping that's going to be proposed along this wall is such that it is fairly resilient, where you can plow snow against it, and it won't kill it off permanently. There have been discussions about replacing the cul-de-sac with a hammerhead. Hammerhead turnarounds are fairly common nowadays. There's reduced impervious area, provides the same maneuverability for, say, an ambulance or a truck, things of that nature. So this shows just a rough sketch of sort of how a hammerhead would work. Rather than provide a turnaround in a cul-de-sac, you can have a vehicle pull into the front of this driveway, back out, and out this way. It works well in a scenario like this where it's a private development, and so there's really an ownership of the road for all the neighbors. What this can allow for is additional green space that we can set aside for plowing, and an area back here where you could build up sort of a snowbank and have it graded so that as it melts it will drain back into the stormwater management system and not off the site. So that's a discussion that snow storage has been brought up as a potential issue, and this is seemingly one of our only feasible.
But this, how much additional green space does this create as opposed to that circle?
It's approximately 600 to 800 square feet. Which is a significant area. I mean, you could pile up a snowbank, 6, 7 feet high in a worst case scenario, and that is significant storage. And being an 18-foot wide roadway, you'll see, much less snow produced in snowbanks in a roadway of that width versus a full width road. So,
what is the dimension between the edge of the road and the wall?
In the wall here, it's about 4 feet.
So for a couple of smaller storms in a row, it won't be an issue. If we get a few of those 1 to 2 footers we've been getting in a row, that we're going to have some problems.
Certainly. I mean, if you get like a dusting, you get a few inches, and you plow it up here, it'll build up a small, 1 foot tall snowbank along the edge here. That isn't significant volume, won't ruin the fence, doesn't stress that at all. And in larger storms, in that scenario, you just push it to the back or to this area here. So.
Okay, and what do the people, the neighbors think? What is their vote? Hammerhead or circle? I think they probably say hammerhead.
I think it's the first time it's been mentioned a couple of times, first time I've actually seen it, so might be share that question.
Can we turn this just a little so they can see it?
This was created about.
I wish the camera would get this so that everyone could see it.
Last minute thought.
This was a result of the last meeting we had.
What?
Snow storage it was an issue at the last meeting we had with the neighbors, so Scott proposed Liz to try to.
And that's just, yes.
You have an independent reviewer looking at the stormwater issues, you can ask her the same question. Have her come back with the circle versus the hammerhead.
Certainly, there's a runoff benefit, non-winter time, reducing impervious area again will allow more storage volume in this area and expansion of this bioretention cell if necessary to reduce discharge from the site even further. So.
I just have one small question. We've got plans here. I'm looking at the landscape plan there, and I'm looking at this plan, and that first driveway is different in all three. What's the driveway supposed to look like in the first one?
This is what we've decided on for now for this first driveway. The plan that you show here does have the extended driveway back here. That was another iteration. Again, we're trying to reduce impervious surface as much as possible.
No garage in the first house.
There is a garage, it should line up with the front of the house.
Should line up with the front of the house. The house footprints are somewhat decided, but may change slightly.
Be a stone
So,
driveway.
so is the front house shifting towards the driveway, or is the driveway shifting towards the front house?
Driveway's going to have to shift toward the house.
Okay.
So we'll shift this down.
Where are the two cars? The whole front of the house is going to be a garage? Well, with the doorway.
The house is 45 feet wide, the garage is 20.
Oh, okay. Half the house. Okay.
Could you design it so that the first house, the access is off of Reedsdale? Just the first house?
That's not desirable from a safety standpoint.
Where
To
would
pull out
people-
from a driveway,
And visitors coming to park,
so
where they'd want to pull onto the road, and then they'd be parking on the new road rather than on, they can't park on Reedsdale Road, so if you have company over, there's nowhere for them to go.
minimizing curb cuts on major roadways is always most desirable, and providing the widest
Because
right
there's two
of way
curb
to
cuts
pull
there
onto.
now with the women's club.
There are two curb cuts there now, and I can attest to, slowing down into that first curb cut. There are generally people speeding behind you that are unhappy when you do that.
I will say it is a challenge going in and out of a driveway on Reedsdale Road.
Yeah, it's not the most desirable situation, so.
Just a thought.
All right. Who else wants to be heard? Yes, sir.
My name is Joe Donahue. I live 117 Reedsdale Road, which is opposite this property here, just on the edge of the drawing here. I'm more comfortable standing. That chair is horrible to this point. Is it picking me up? And I got a loud voice as it is.
Yeah, you do.
I really became aware of a lot of the details of this when I did meet with the developer a week or so ago. And subsequent to that, I went out, I walked through the neighborhood looking for basically the feel, the space of everything there. I also researched, the internet is wonderful, it puts it at your fingertip these days, but I wanted to look at the square footage of lots, and I wanted to compare that with what the setbacks are as opposed to what they actually were, the required versus what they were. And in general, what I was finding is that the average lot size, and I'm taking out the house at the corner of Canton Ave down here because that's an inordinately large property, and I didn't want to taint my opinion to favor my case. But looking at all the other properties there, I was getting an average square footage of lot of in the vicinity of 10,000 square feet. The average size houses were not very much different than is proposed here, except they're on much smaller lots. My objection to this is it gives it more of an urban feel to it. It's squeezing space down. When I look at the square footage of a building relative to the square foot of the lot, the spatial feel of it is where I'm feeling it crunched down. Now, in order to do that, we have to go to all the exemptions being asked for here. I do like Mr. Duffy's suggestion of two, houses out at Reedsdale Road and substantial lots, but I also understand the financial constraints of the whole thing, and maybe the asking price to develop something like that is not the correct place to be. As far as this development here, there's a few issues with safety that concern me. The first one is it's a very narrow road, and pulling in and out of it, living on Reedsdale Road, as was just mentioned, I saw a week ago up at St. Elizabeth's that has a driveway coming out, and it's 2 cars wide in a very tight radius. And the cars going in and out of there, one coming out, cut into the high-speed lane to make the corner because there was a car on the other side. And a car coming out from there had to swing out into the high-speed lane to make it. And the tight radius on that, I think, presents a problem, as well as a tight radius coming in and trying to make it into the first driveway here. Another item that came up looking at this is that a mail truck, somebody parking on the street, the UPS delivery, anybody on the street is going to preclude a fire truck getting down to the far end of the street. I'm not living there, it's not my concern, but I still think it's something that should be weighed. What other thoughts did I have on it? Trash removal. These large trash trucks they have these days, I really doubt whether it could pull the 3-point turn and clear to get out of there. I think it'd be about a 7 or 9-point turn. They don't make particularly tight radius turns.
They have to back down.
As a result, I think they're going to be backing down or backing out. Either way, the beep, 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 we're going to be getting used to that. The other part of that is if a trash truck is trying to approach this, and whether he pulls out and backs in, or he's trying to back out blindly, the fire department, their responses to a quarter of the town is out that direction. And all it would take is one car to be trying to cut in, and it's going to delay the responses there. So in general, I'm not for the density, the tight density of this whole area. I like the idea of the residential development there. I understand the numbers are not coming together, and perhaps that, again, is the selling price of the, that the Women's Club is asking to develop this whole thing. So thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, we've heard the developer say that, I mean, you could do a 3-lot subdivision. The applicant says that because of the cost of site work, a 3-lot subdivision doesn't work. And that's why he's requesting a 4-lot subdivision. Do you have any expertise in that area as to whether a 3-lot subdivision would be, I mean, many of your comments would be the same for a 3-lot subdivision as...
I still think you're trying to squeeze in a very tight road. The road proposed here is narrower than my driveway. That was kind of an eye-opener to me. And I know, 2 cars parked next to each other is pretty tight in my driveway. They go through an 8-foot garage door, so obviously my 21-foot driveway is adequate. But I'm not sure a layout that would put 3 in there. But as Mr. Duffy had said, a house here and a house there on a substantial lot, the only thing missing from that, and I understand John's position on this whole thing of to make it work financially, it all has to come together with the 4 houses on there. And, you know, the wild card in this whole thing is the selling price, and I guess there's a known cost for destruction, demolition of the existing facility, and the unknown cost, which would drive me crazy trying to move forward with an investment of remediation that needed to take place.
Well, the 2-house lot would do nothing about the drainage. I don't think
That's
an A and R
significant.
lot, there would be any work on the drainage. They just go in and...
I believe they get nothing for it.
There would
I
be,
think
no, there would be...
there are
yeah,
some
that's
neighbors
right.
who
The
absolutely
drainage
benefit
would
by
not
this.
be- It probably wouldn't be better and might well be worse.
It's possible. It's possible it could be worse. It depends on how you demolish the building, level the land.
Yeah, well...
I'd argue you might be slightly improved, because if you're going from a 60-something, 6,000-something square foot structure to one that has a footprint of 2 that have,
But you'd have the parking and the driveways.
as wherever the existing conditions is, yes. You know,
Okay, well, any other questions? Okay, who else wants to
Thank
be
you.
heard? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I don't have a prepared statement, but my name is Jeffrey Erickson. I'm a direct abutter on the north side, right here. I think it's human nature. Most people don't like change. This is going to create quite a bit of change in the neighborhood. The 2 most likely forms of development would be residential or institutional. And I agree with my neighbors that the desirable of the 2 development possibilities is by far the residential. I have not been part of this. I have not been a part of this type of development before, so this is all new to me. So I don't know if it's typical or not, but I can say that John and Paul and Scott have seemed to go above and beyond what you would expect maybe some developers to do to make accommodations to the neighborhood. And if their plan works out the way that they have laid it out to us, it's a credit to them. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Carol Balfe, and I live at 19 Lantern Lane, so I am right there. There's been a lot of talk about putting two houses on the lot, 3 houses on the lot, but nobody's forthcoming with those offers. The one offer that we do have is for 4 houses. Otherwise, it's going to be institutional, and none of us want that. What they've done is a monumental piece of work on this. They've worked with us constantly, always taking in our points of view. We've had so many discussions. This is the only feasible plan for this piece of property. Thank you.
Right. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Seth Buckley, and I live at 61 Walnut Street, which is directly across from the entrance. So we're on the corner of Walnut and Reedsdale. And, you know, I don't think we're nearly as impacted as some of our other neighbors, especially drainage issues, all that. For us, it's more a safety issue. And, you know, we're for the plan. We're all for the plan. Would it be nice to have 2 or 3 houses? Maybe, but I think this is still a great plan. Our issue with anything institutional, if this doesn't go through, is the safety of the parking. I mean, both on Reedsdale, which is crazy, but also on Walnut Street, where parking is illegal on both sides of the street. But every time there's a women's club function, there are people parked up and down both sides of the street illegally. You know, I never wanted to be a bad neighbor and, you know, have them ticketed or towed, and usually I'd go over to the function and tell them to try and announce it, you know, please move your car. Say park in front of our driveway, in front of our walkway. There are lots of little kids on the street. The fire engines, you know, always come up and down Walnut Street, going out that back way. And it's a huge safety issue for us. Every time there's a function, we have to clean our yard. People park on our lawn, they throw trash. So, I mean, we think that this, you know, considering the other options, you know, of something commercial or institutional, we think this is a great proposal, and we're all for it.
All right. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Kelly Baker, and I'm at 65 Reedsdale Road, and I'm in line with what Seth just said. I mean, of the 3 kind of things we looked at, keeping the existing women's club in its current state of disrepair. I mean, because I walk by it every day with my kids and my dog, or an institutional development, or the residential. I'm all for the residential. I'm thrilled. John has been great. We've met so many times, and I just came here to support him and to support the development. That's it.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Now, unless someone else wants to speak, we will speak ourselves and discuss. Yes.
Just a question. We have hired a independent civil engineer to view this plan because our staff here at the town hall
review the drainage. Yeah.
Okay. And I noticed that Bill just bristled a little when they mentioned the hammer, this plan. Has she opined on this? I understand it's a woman too, which is great. Or did she opine on the round cul-de-sac?
She hasn't opined at all, has she?
Well, it's yeah, because
She's reviewing.
We all want to see that, obviously.
Right. She's reviewing this submittal and the drainage calculations. I'll make sure that she gets both end of driveway types.
Because it might be to John's benefit to look at both, you know, and the neighbors and the water problem and the snow, I think, the big thing. So, but John's paying for this. Is he paying for the independent?
He's paying for both.
So on that, you have stated a possible date of October 9th for signature approval?
For,
how are we going to do
what I have stated.
How is this going to work?
Is that, oh, well, I'm glad you asked. I think that we should discuss the waivers.
Okay.
And determine whether or not we're going to do the waivers, because if we're not going to do the waivers,
right,
the plan becomes much more difficult. In fact, the plan would have to be changed. So I think that we'll discuss the waivers, and then perhaps discuss whether or not we generally approve of the plan as it currently stands, with the idea that on the 9th we will have a written decision with a variety of
That we would then discuss and
reflecting,
hold a
which
vote on.
we would
Okay.
discuss.
All right.
And with any luck, we would be assuming that this is, the pro-developer scenario. With any luck, it would be ready to go. The plan would be complete, and
We'd have those missing items
I mean,
and
we'd
our
have the
report.
landscape plan, we would have determined what the hammerhead is, the neighbors would have looked at the landscape plan, we would have figured out what the snow is. Is the reviewer, Bill, going to be able to say something about snow?
I'm going to ask her tomorrow.
That's perfect.
And she'd get us a report prior to the 9th that we could review?
I hope so. That was our plan. That was
Okay.
our original plan.
Okay, good.
She should be, so with, all the pieces could be in place on the 9th. There is, and if we were, if it was ready, we could sign it and file it with the town clerk on the 10th.
Okay.
So, I guess we could start by discussing the waiver requested for the right-of-way, which is 35 feet, with a drainage easement adjoining it of 20 feet.
So the no waiver is actually necessary if we consider that 20 feet part of the right-of-way?
Well, we're not going
Is
to,
that
we're not
correct?
going to consider it part of the right-of-way. It will be part of the lot, but it
Okay.
will be an easement held by the homeowners
All right.
association because of the frontages,
Okay.
the setback requirements. So with that 35 feet, 20-foot drainage easement, let's see whether or not, we don't seem to have a complete board. So we'll,
I think it'll only take a minute.
Yeah.
so we will then move on to the question of the sidewalk
Yes.
and the pavement width. Pavement width, the sidewalk, and the right-of-way width.
We have reduction required cul-de-sac radius as well.
What is the required? He said it was 65-foot radius, actually.
You were looking it up, or you were looking up
Is it
something
85
earlier. Was that what you were looking at?
I was trying to find the roadway width,
Ah,
and it's not in there.
It's in the,
Must be
it's in the plan, the typical plan.
Find cul-de-sac.
It's not in
Find
here.
cul-de-sac.
Computer.
Google it,
Where
Bill.
is your typical plan?
Is it Google it? Like,
This
probably
is just
you
what
can find
you
on that.
put in our packets. I forgot to bring my book.
All right. Well, I actually did bring my book, so I
See?
should have it.
Should we wait for our guidance from the engineer that's going to view this, give us the second?
It's
Well, I
just
think that's
drainage.
on the drainage.
Just
It's not on
drainage
waivers.
Well, that could affect the,
Well,
pave.
they're reviewing it as presented.
That's
Right.
sweet.
I mean, if they're reviewing it with the waivers. I mean, if we're not willing to give the waivers, they have nothing to review.
What if they review it and they decide they need a little more?
Less
pavement?
impervious area.
So
Well, then they let us
Does
know
it?
and we make it, we're not voting on anything tonight, correct?
No, we're going to,
So we would have the option of changing that.
we're going to,
So what are we doing?
we're going to vote on the waivers, whether
we
or
are
not
voting
we're
on the
willing to
We'll
give the
entertain them, of course
waivers.
we'll
As
entertain them.
they
No,
stand now.
not entertain them, whether we're willing to grant the waivers.
But do we have enough of facts from this other engineer that's coming in?
The other engineer is doing the drainage.
Well, what Bernie's saying is, if the engineer comes back and indicates, I'll just go to a simple circumstance, you need less impervious area there.
Less impervious area?
Yes. So that you'll need less paved area.
Well,
And then maybe they can accomplish that.
18 feet
But
is,
I
we're
understand
not
what you're
gonna
saying.
reduce it.
We're looking at what's proposed.
16 in Brush Hill?
Or how many lots?
6.
I think the answer, Bernie, would be if they came back and wanted to change something, and we voted tonight to grant the waivers, we're granting the waivers on
So
what's
confirmed 18.
put in front of us. So if we grant a waiver to go from 24-foot paved width to an 18-foot paved width, and for some reason, the drainage design impacts that, then that would change things.
All right.
I mean, is it that simple?
Yeah, but we can always, because if we're looking at the waivers tonight and
As they're
voting whether or not,
proposed.
as they're proposed, and potentially even voting them in, we're not voting the whole plan until the 9th. So we have the option of saying, we'd like to rescind the vote on the 18-foot waiver and make it something else.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I think, obviously, if the design engineer for the drainage come back and said, we'll make the road wider, and they get closer to code, then we certainly wouldn't have a significant problem with that.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
so I
And
think
then we can always
I think we
revise
can
that,
vote
yeah.
on what's proposed tonight.
Let's just vote on the waivers, whether or not we're willing to give the waivers, just because it's important to the applicant to know.
I think the neighbors apparently have no problem with the waivers as suggested.
Well,
I don't think the
Well,
neighbors see it as an impact. and
some of the neighbors. We had a neighbor who was not an abutter, but a neighbor.
One who didn't necessarily disagree with the waiver requested, didn't specifically indicate that he had some safety issues.
Right, and he thought the lot should be bigger.
But turning out onto Reesdale Road, whether you have two lots like he would have been more happy with, or turning out onto Reesdale Road from one road, as far as safety, I don't see the substantial difference. So my point is, to look at waivers, do the neighbors, are they offended by it? Apparently not. Is it a detriment to the community as a whole? I haven't heard anybody explain a very specific detriment to the community as a whole.
Well, we've heard the detriment of that it should be a park.
Well, I don't think that's a detriment to the...
Well, no, that the public benefit, that developing it into a subdivision precludes it from being a park, and therefore approving a subdivision would be detrimental to the possibility
I don't
of a
quite read it
park.
that way. I don't quite
In other words, that rationale doesn't
jive with me. I didn't hear anybody explain a specific detriment to the development as it's proposed.
All right.
You know, that driveway, I think Mr. McDonald mentioned it, if you're coming down this new proposed street and you're coming out of your driveway, there's not a lot of space here. Could the driveway be put on this side of the house? But then you've got two curb cuts that are too close together. I don't know if
It looks like they've got 30 feet or
Well,
so.
Bernie, it's different than this drawing. He told us anyways already. It's supposed to be coming into the front of the house, so it's already moved over to some extent.
Look at that, and then move
Right
it
here,
down.
yeah. Well,
Bernie,
yeah, I have it
and
right
you'll
here.
see you've
No,
got
it's not
about-
that either. That's what Bill was explaining, that it's in different locations. Am
Where
I
is
correct
that
or
first
incorrect?
driveway?
That this driveway is supposed to
Point that out.
come into the front of the house, and it has to move over from what's pictured there.
This driveway is going to be moved over.
And it's about 50 feet,
How
30
far?
feet
Between
from the
Reedsdale.
street.
Reedsdale Road?
There's-
No, not quite. That's about, if it's moved down here, it'll be about 20 feet.
Can you take that driveway and, can you take the driveway in house and flip
Flip it.
Yeah.
The reason why we have the driveways located on this end of each house is to accommodate grading to step each lot down. Like I said, we're maintaining general existing topography where it's downhill the whole way. So what we're actually proposing are walkout basements on this side of each house.
But that's
Going
not,
into existing grade.
that's not the part that starts to drop. That's in the flat spot.
I mean, this could be, yeah, you could do that. For this particular house, you may be able to do
There's also
that. We can look at that.
For the homeowner, though, the noisy side is Reedsdale Road, so I prefer to locate the garage on that side of the house, so that, you know, rather than putting a living room and a family room on the Reedsdale Road side of the house, it's much better for the homeowner to have it on the garage on that side.
you're coming out, so that's, you know.
We could have a right turn only at the end of the driveway.
Yeah, let them drive down it too.
Have you checked the ability of a car to turn right from Reedsdale and then turn directly into
Make
that
into
driveway?
this.
Do you have enough?
Yes, a single passenger vehicle can make that turn. They'll have to come in, take the turn. It will be wide on this side, but they can do that.
Your scale shows from Reedsdale, scaling it off here, Reedsdale Road to the, probably, what would that be, that face of the house to be about 25 feet.
Just about, I mean, the setback from the
So the center line of your
property line has to be 20 feet.
So the center line of your driveway would be about, what? What's the width of the driveway?
Driveway's 12 feet wide.
So would it be about 31 feet in from the center line of the driveway to the turning lane?
Yes. That's more than adequate for a single passenger vehicle. I mean, the fire truck can't make that turn, certainly, but they never will.
And then, just to bring up something else that somebody asked about, which is trash removal. Are you thinking that people are going to take the trash to the curb of the private road, or are they going to put it on Reedsdale?
Similar to the houses that have curb cuts directly on Reedsdale now, that trash truck drives down Reedsdale and picks up their trash there. As a homeowners association, will be required to bring their trash to the top of the road. So the trash truck will never pull down there. No.
And the homeowners association, of course, would have the obligation of making sure that there weren't barrels left around.
Right. Okay. So did you want to take the waivers in order?
Well, let's just, maybe before we do the waivers, are we?
Just one other thing before you know, if I lived in this, getting older, if I lived in this house here and I had to cart my rubbish all the way up, you know, that might affect the sale, you know, the house that John is selling. So I would just assume, like my street, Milton Hill Road, they back down my street, and there's nothing preventing the trash truck from backing down.
Well, except the town doesn't back trash trucks down private roads.
Well, the town, if the people that own the fee to the middle of the street, if they have no objections to it.
Well, I mean, it costs no backing trucks down.
I suspect, though, that the market for those houses are going to be young people with families, and so they'll have kids who can drag the trash barrels up for them.
One of the kids in the neighborhood will make some money.
Exactly.
No, just think about it. Lugging your rubbish up, I'd much rather have the truck back down like they do.
Well, but some of the neighbors say they don't want to hear the truck back down.
How long is the road total?
240 feet to the center of the cul-de-sac.
Some driveways in Milton that long.
There's no trash truck that's going to want to back up on
Just thinking of the saleability of the house.
So let's, before we get into the waivers, in general, without committing yourself, is this a plan that, assuming that the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, that the board could support by approving the subdivision plan? And it's general. This is not a vote of approval, but before we get into waivers, we really should be considering whether or not at the end of the day we could approve this plan. And I personally think that it's a pretty good plan. And I'm convinced that a 3-lot subdivision would not generate the money that's needed to create the drainage system that this has and the landscaping. I think that actually a 3-lot plan would be really, really tight and would end up being less nice and less of a good neighbor to the people living around it, and it probably would be somewhat wetter to them. So I'm able to vote, and I do understand that there are people in the Women's Club who don't want to lose the building, or if they lose the building, want to see a park. But it seems to me that this is one of those ideas that doesn't have any financial certainty, and I would hate to see that building just fall down because the Women's Club has to abandon it. I think that this is you know, it really is too bad, but I do think that this is a good plan, and I don't think that there's a reasonable alternative. I'd agree with the institutional idea that paving the back, which they'd have to do to get the parking, I mean, that's a big building, and that would be 60 to 100 spaces would be needed back there. Because we can't waive the parking, and that would not be good. And also, given the parking requirements for an institutional use in a residential area, it would be hugely expensive. I don't see that there's an alternative. So I'm able to vote for this plan next time. Yes.
I would like to see a definite plan. Then I can, which I know the neighbors in the neighborhood want this because of the alternatives, which I wouldn't want a commercial thing here or some institutional thing here. But we've got 3 different plans just for this one house. I want to see the plan that our consultant, that John is paying for.
You've got to remember that most subdivision plans don't have driveways or houses on them. They just have lots.
It's the road and the lot.
This is part of the extra mile that they're walking by showing the driveways and the houses. Because most subdivision plans are simply...
Well, maybe they shouldn't have shown this, because now that I've seen this, I don't want to prove something that someone might get killed here.
Well, if you think it's dangerous, then...
What's another week?
That's it.
Well,
there is a closing scheduled for mid-October, and you are going to get to see, definitely going to get to see the final plan, because that's what we're going to be voting on.
But that's when I will vote for the
I understand. And you're saying that if you think that entrance is safe, you could vote for it?
Just one of the things.
Well, I mean, what else are you concerned about?
I want to see the topographical. I want to see the way the
topo is there. Go behind it.
Page 2.
Yeah.
Go behind it. It's
no, I
there.
want the expert, the lady with the stamp to.
The drainage reviewer is just going to stamp nothing. She's going to review it.
She's reviewing
applicant. She's reviewing the applicant's engineer's calculations. She's not stamping anything.
These guys have already stamped it. You want to see where the topo is, page 2.
Okay.
In any event, you should, this is pretty, yes, Bill.
In support of what Bernie's saying, the reason that the houses and the driveways are there are because of the drainage numbers. In order to make those in order to figure what those drainage numbers are, they have to know how much impervious surface is going to be. They have to know how much roof drainage is going to be. So they had to take and put those things down. Are they going to change the design of the house? Maybe. Are they going to change the driveway? They can't change it too much. There's going to be a window of, the driveway can be this big and it's going to produce this much water. If they make it this much, it's going to increase it by whatever that percentage is. And that will be in the report submitted by Lisa Eggleston.
And when we do an approval, we're going to require general compliance with the layout shown here.
Yes.
There's going to be some wiggle room, but there's not going to be unlimited wiggle room. All right, so you're keeping your powder dry.
That's right.
Mike, do you think you could vote for this?
I'd just like to say that some of the women that spoke from the Women's Club are very heartfelt, and I sympathize with that, but I don't think it's in our purview to, coax things in the direction they want. But the proposed development that I see before me, yes, I could see it happening.
Okay, Ed?
No, I can't support this. The extraordinary list of waivers indicates that it's something unique, and the drainage infrastructure 50 years from now could easily have failed. And then what? Then who's picking up the price tag then? I just think it's to try to squeeze the maximum out of it, and it's, no waivers are necessary if you have a two-lot subdivision, no waivers are necessary, no pavement is necessary, no sidewalks are necessary, and off you go. And the improvements can be done down here at a minimum cost, and yeah, that's the way it should be. It's an extraordinary concoction, in my opinion, sir.
All right. Now, since a subdivision requires 3 votes,
You don't need my opinion, is what you're
we
trying to
we
say.
would, well, Bernie is keeping
Oh, I'm
his
on the
powder
fence,
dry.
Oh, okay, he's on the fence.
But
He's on the fence.
I'm not
you
convinced
say.
yet.
Just doesn't know where the fence is yet.
They're waiting,
That's
they're
right.
waiting for
Yeah, that's on
specification.
my
Might be a
list.
chain
I'm going to
link
find out what
pointed
fence
fence.
that Bernie's on. Fair enough. Well, I also am sorry that the Women's Club is going. I can remember going to fairs there and many other events, but it is clear that the Women's Club has voted, and there is a legal purchase and sale, and it is unfortunately, for those who have spoken in front of us, it is out of our jurisdiction as far as the internal matters of the club go. I also agree with Eddie that there is something unique and extraordinary going on, and that is the fact that the developer has committed to reducing the drainage. The drainage improvements that they've proposed appear to be state-of-the-art improvements, and they're expensive. And they have worked with the neighbors to try and come up with a solution that addresses those needs. And I think it's admirable that the neighbors and the developers have been working so closely. That doesn't always happen. The waivers that they've requested are for the most part related to those drainage improvements and are doing their best to keeping the amount of impervious area low enough that, or enough so that the vehicles can move around safely, but not so much that there's excess paving contributing to further drainage issues. So assuming that we get the remainder of the information that we've requested, I would be able to support this.
Okay, now, so that gives the applicant an idea that there may be 3 votes and maybe 4. What about a 35-foot right-of-way with the drainage easement of additional 20 feet alongside? Is that agreeable to the board? Let's maybe we can discuss these things individually. Any discussion on that? Okay. Why don't we raise our hands to see who's willing to waive the 50-foot requirement? All right. Okay.
To what dimension, though?
35 feet.
Well, I realize that, but this
with the 20-foot easement.
I still want to see the.
You're going to see. That's, and anyone not willing to, okay. So 4-1. Now, the pavement of 18 feet, we did a 6-foot subdivision up on Brush Hill Road.
6-house subdivision.
6, did I say 6 lots?
You said 6 foot.
6 foot.
I think it was larger than that.
A 6-lot subdivision. Up on Brush Hill Road with an 18-foot paved surface. So there's Preston. And any discussion about that?
And that was on a hill.
And it was on a hill. This is on a hill too, so it's sort of on all fours.
Not this much of a
This
hill.
one's going the other way. Okay, so that's the discussion. Who would be willing to grant this waiver? All right, that's 4, and not willing. That's 1, 4-1. Now, the sidewalk waiver, a tricky waiver, and I think that it is critical to the project, and that the project actually has a fairly significant public benefit with respect to improving the drainage.
There's also precedent of Reedsdale. Artwell Street doesn't have sidewalks. So.
So it's Reesdale Road. Right.
It's a 4-house you know,
Right.
subdivision. I think it's reasonable.
And it's only 250 feet. So, and to have a sidewalk, you'd be running those driveways. All right, any other discussion? Who, are those who are willing to waive the sidewalk requirement? All right, 4 and not willing, 1. Okay. The 10-foot easement for the drain line as opposed to a 20-foot easement? Who's willing to?
Do we have a discussion on that one?
Yeah, we can.
I just wanted to note that the 10-foot is larger than the existing, wider than the existing easement, and has been agreed to
Existing.
by both neighbors.
7-foot easement.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
And I want our consultant to, she's opining on the drainage, so she's
Right.
going to be looking at this.
She will, okay.
If she
so you'll
says it can fit in 10 feet, or
If she can.
7
right.
feet and 3 feet,
Exactly. Ask her if she can get it within 10 feet still. All right, so who's willing to grant this waiver? 3. Who is not willing? 1.
Well,
No, we're going to do abstentions this time.
say it
Who's
again.
not willing? 1. Who abstains?
I'm on the fence.
That's an
Are you
abstention.
abstaining? Yes.
Okay.
You're
I'll
going to be
abstain.
listed as an abstention.
Well, when I see the final plan, I
Right,
just might
exactly.
vote yes.
This is going to
But is-
be.
What
Now-
if the engineer says it can't fit in there?
And
Then
then
we'll have to revisit it.
you're going to be able to deal with that. The street jog across the street,
The last one.
that it doesn't line up precisely with Walnut Street, and you've heard the explanation as to why it can't. Who is willing to waive the street jog requirement?
I'd like to hear the explanation of why it has to line up.
Well, that's just what the rules and regs require.
Well, yeah, but
If it were a full street, especially if it were a through street
Right,
somewhere else.
exactly. If it were a through street,
we
it
would
would
be
be.
requiring it to line up.
We would,
so.
but no one is, very few people are going to go from this street across on, well,
You could.
we don't
It's
know.
possible, yeah.
Ah,
It lines, right now, that
It's
new.
close now.
That new roadway is the old driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right across the street from it.
It's a 4-lane street. I don't think the,
All right. Okay, so any other discussion? Who is willing to waive this requirement? 3,
abstain
and abstain.
until I see something.
Now, the hammerhead. If the hammerhead is agreeable to the fire chief,
Yeah.
Fire Chief Bill,
Okay.
And-
or the cul-de-sac. I'd like to see that, if you're going to talk to the fire chief, you might as well ask him, does either one preclude him from
Right.
doing his job?
but I mean, you can mention the snow issue. But if the hammerhead is deemed okay
By the
Passes
fire-
muster.
Yeah.
by the chief, if it passes the chief's muster, yes. Would we be willing to?
I'd like to get also the neighbor's opinion on whether they have any preference to the hammerhead or the
Well,
cul-de-sac.
exactly. And that would be, so that's sort of like as part of the landscape plan. They have to be agreeable to the landscape plan. And if they're agreeable to that and the hammerhead, then, and the chief, it passes the chief's muster, who would be willing to waive that one?
I like the idea of the hammerhead if it
I think
passes
it's
all.
a nicer look.
Well, also, it's going to give additional area for drainage because it won't be paved in that part. And I think this is a project where that is absolutely key.
All right. So I think that, and the street lights are going to be specified on the landscape plan, and they're going to
Fence detail too.
they're going to be electrified by the individual homeowners, however they and we're going to get that. So it's not going to be, I don't know if a waiver is required, but if a waiver is required, are we willing to do that?
I have a question on that one.
Okay.
If the lights are going on the individual landowner,
Yeah.
are they going to have a requirement that they be on for a certain period,
Yeah.
or can they go shut them off?
No, they're going to have that's going to be in the homeowners association. I mean, this is, it's either that or have a new meter installed for them, and this is not what they want to do.
Can we add a requirement that lights be shielded so that they're not
Sure.
spilling,
Yes.
overspilling?
No overspill. Okay. So we'll have, I'll draft a decision, hopefully, which will hit the high points here.
Can I-
And in the meantime, yeah.
I have one more.
Yeah.
On the, on each one of those retention cells in the front of every house,
Which will be in an easement.
they'll be in the easement, but in
Maintained by
several
the
other,
homeowners association.
right, but in several other towns, and even this one, when those things get put in, the first homeowner knows what it's for. The next homeowner might know what it is. The third one has no idea what it is. They see a depression in their front yard and they start to fill it.
And they go to flooding.
All right.
And
So there's a
it
homeowners
perpetuates, but
association.
it needs to be something that's going to be carried forth to the deed that's going to make mention that this thing has a purpose.
Have a signed deposit, no fill? In each of these.
Whatever you want.
Or clean fill only. No, well, it'll be, we'll,
Deed restriction, yeah.
Keep,
The
keep,
deed
well,
restriction
no,
makes
what would
it-
be the homeowners association, would just be, I mean, they're going to, any new homeowner is going to get the,
Right.
the homeowner's book. And so
They
it
will
would,
see that it's an easement, I suppose.
yeah.
They'll have
But
to-
it needs to be in the specific
It
language,
will
and
be-
that language
it
has
will
to be
it will
recorded
be
with the
mentioned, yeah.
deed.
I mean, the easement will be recorded, but it will be described in the homeowner's documents.
We have issues of other easements that have not been recorded, and they're now coming back to lots of research for me that,
Is there any way that the easement can be specifically described as a bioretention easement, something that, catches the eye, as opposed to just
Well,
a general
I mean,
easement?
putting them in the documents, I mean, they're going to have to light the, they're going to have to do a number of things. Okay, so I think that's as far as we're going to go tonight with this. And we're looking forward to the developers producing the material for the board and for the neighbors. And anyone else can ask the town planner, who will get a copy. And we will take this up again on the 9th.
At what time?
Uh,
Do we have anything else scheduled? 6:45?
Did he say 7?
Did
he
not
didn't say anything yet.
6:45?
Well,
He
why
will
don't-
take the, he will
why-
take
why
the first,
doesn't he do so?
6:45 is what I heard.
6:45.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We're going to continue next meeting.
Thank you.
Now,
What's next?
Ned. Yes. Well, thank you. Well, no, it's always good to read the deed. So Ned, did that edify you, that last discussion. Were you happy to be here at the Milton Planning Board?
I believe he's always happy to be here at the Milton Planning Board.
I don't know that Mr. Moxley is 3 hours later.
To get to Rhode Island about midnight.
Did he leave?
No, he's here.
Okay.
But that's not what's next.
What do you want? I don't have an agenda, I gave it to him. Okay.
A stick with some pretty pictures on it if it's appropriate.
Sounds like a plan. Bill?
Sorry.
I just wanted to see what was on there.
I
don't know how you do
I
it.
can't keep these agendas.
Am I looking at it?
I have no idea what happened. I specifically packed it and gone.
No.
Looking at.
It's all right, I printed out a handful of things I could have sworn I put in my bag. I got them here, and they weren't. 5 minutes before I left. No idea.
I put a paper on my desk and I can't find it. How could it have gotten?
Too much stuff. We need laptops. Like
Yes,
the
we should have
select-
laptops.
Yeah.
Why don't we?
I don't know. Who bought the laptops
Let's
for the
do it.
selectmen?
Yeah, let the chairman, why don't you see if
Put
the
it in a
town
requisition.
I don't, well, it would be easier, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
look.
I don't work well with
Tablets.
laptops.
But think how cool we'd look.
It would be
Sit here
cool.
and,
You can- But, you know, some people have said the selectmen look like they're sleeping when they're just staring. I mean, they've got their heads
It is a
down.
temptation to just look at the screen and not at your fellow members. That is a
You want
problem.
this?
So.
And so it doesn't, you know, it's not interactive.
Sure it is.
We like the human interaction.
It's sort of like that book, Bowling Alone.
Oh, you want
Well, singles, you know, right?
All right. Don't forget to introduce yourself to the...
I shall. Good evening, Ned Corcoran, an attorney here on behalf of the Sullivan family, the developers of the owners of the Milton Hill House and the developers of the apartment facility at 36 and 50 Elliott Street. I think we're here to review the Henry House and Carriage House components that were remaining for final review under site plan approval. I think we were so focused on designs of the main apartment building that we kind of left for further discussion and review of the redevelopment of the Henry House and the Hill House. I have a very brief overview presentation. I don't have all of the materials that were submitted to you. The architect submitted directly to Bill. I do have some, but not all, of what was submitted. So the architect is not here, so if there are questions that we need to get back to you on, I can happily do that.
You have in your packet 2 sets. One says Milton Hill Apartments Henry House demo set, which is the Mrs. Henry House that has the addition on it, and then the picture directly below it has the addition taken off. And it has all of the plans for that building attached in that packet.
And in fact, the wing of the Henry House has been demolished.
Yes.
It has been removed.
And the single page that you have will be the new carriage house, which is starting with the addition that was on the Henry House that's been moved to the back and now has the 2-car garage built under it. And you have that single page that looks like that.
You can hand me clicker. So, in brief, just to sort of orient, this is an aerial view of what was existing conditions with the Hill House sort of centered. Elliott Street is on the top upper side of the view. The two families are shown next to the site driveway. Those two-family houses have been demolished. There is a large hole where those houses were. You can see the roof of the Henry House to the left of that. This is a plan view dropped in showing what is proposed to be developed from the aerial is the main 27-unit apartment building, the Henry House, and the roof of the carriage house on the left-hand side. This is an aerial view of the plan showing the little closer detail with the existing Hill House in the foreground, the main 27-unit apartment building in the darker colors, and then the Henry House and the carriage house in yellow. And this is an aerial view looking from above Morton Terrace. And really the purpose of the carriage house was, the idea of the carriage house was developed in concert with the neighbors who really wanted the carriage house as a structure that would be immediate to the neighborhood. It would bring the Henry, it would mirror in color, but be of a more modern, somewhat more modern design than the Henry House. But it would bring the feel that those two buildings, smaller neighborhood scale structures, would be part of the neighborhood, although on the other side of the fence, and they would act as a sort of physical buffer to mitigate the view of the new building and also the existing Hill House. What I do have is, because I'd gotten them from the architect, are the four sides of the proposed carriage house.
They're blank on TV.
And sort of starting in the upper right corner, the four views, the one on the upper right is the side of the carriage house that faces to Morton Terrace. You can see it's built, there's a retaining wall, existing retaining wall that's several feet high that runs along the back side of the parking area. If I go back one, you can see how the parking area along there's a retaining wall that's about 3.5 to 4 feet high. The carriage house is set so that it takes advantage of the retaining wall. And so you can see how on the lower right-hand corner of that elevation, the retaining wall is shown. Down below that is the carriage house from the other side, looking back as if you're looking towards Morton Terrace. The lower left is the sort of front of the carriage house that faces to the Henry House. And you see the two garage doors where the garage level parking is located. And then in the upper left is the Henry House that faces back sort of up the hill into the wooded area above the retaining wall. I would note that about an hour ago, 4 of the neighbors left. They were here. I had a long conversation with them. Danielle Chauvet, Mrs. Tracy, they are the two who own the lots immediately abutting at the end of Morton Terrace. Brian O'Halloran and Gerda Conant's daughter, and I forget her first name, but they were all here and expressed their support for this. And I received an email this evening from Jerry Moffett, who's the next one in from, and her husband, next one in from the Chauvets, expressing her support. She liked the fact that it has a tall appearance because it brings it present and it helps to mask the Hill House, which is up above. You can see the existing Hill House from up above, and it masks that nicely. The next is, and I don't think this is something that you had in your packet, but this is just the floor plan and the roof plan of the proposed carriage house. In the lower right is the garage level. You can see the 2 garage parking spaces, stairs up on the right-hand side. The lower left is the first living level to the 2nd floor, and that is the kitchen, living room, half bath. The 3rd level, which is sort of within the roof level, is 2 bedrooms and a full bath. And then the roof design itself. It's interesting, it's gabled on 4 sides. And that's the overview of the carriage house. The colors is designed that it would match the colors in the Henry house. The yellows would blend, the roof treatments would be the same, the trims would be roughly the same in terms of color. The neighbors like that. They express the fact that that yellow at the end of the road brings it forward, makes it feel again like it's part of the neighborhood, and that the mass of the major development, the existing Hill House and the new apartment building are over on the other side. And in addition to that, I don't have here, but the landscape plan, which introduces lots of new evergreen trees along the edge of the retaining wall, and up as it's sort of an L-shaped design. You've got existing woods. That green space that's up above the carriage house is all pretty dense woods with a lot of invasives. A lot of that's going to be cleaned out. The mature trees will remain, and then there'll be infill, particularly along the edges, with various evergreens that will provide a year-round screening, as opposed to the deciduous trees that are now, which lose their leaves.
Is this part of the landscape plan?
That was approved, and that was already approved. But Mrs. Tracy in particular is the closest abutter to the carriage house, and she just wanted to be reminded that the combination of the landscape plan would help soften the look for her of the carriage house, but also that the carriage house then softens the look as you go further into that. So they left here, they were all satisfied. They asked me to express their support for the plans as they were developed, and open it to questions.
All right. And we have quite a nice rendering of the Henry house.
What's your schedule for the carriage house as compared to the rest of the development? You're making a lot of progress.
Yes, and they're really, you know, the digging of the hole and putting in all the site utilities is first and foremost. It's a very complicated and interesting site from a site utility perspective. All the stormwater, the drainage, the water, the sewer. We're looping the water from the end of Morton Terrace tying down into Elliott Street, which the neighbors again expressed that's helpful, because right now the water dead ends at Morton Terrace, so it's going to improve water quality, it's going to improve water pressure. But all of that has to be installed. And I know that they have a foundation permit for the main building, there's demolition permit. The demolition permits, obviously, the two families are gone. The Henry house is partially demoed with the wing. They're using the Henry house for the time being as their on-site office.
Right.
And so I think their main goal is to get going and get the foundation in for the main building so that they can be erecting through the winter. Get that in as weather tight as soon as possible. The carriage house will lag a little bit, but it's not going to lag by much. I think ultimately it all wants to wrap together, because...
So there's not going to be a long period where the main building's up, but the
No.
carriage house isn't in
No.
place? Okay.
And the Henry house, again, the work on the Henry house will go concurrently. They want everything in and done. It's more efficient for the contractor as well. So the contractor's there, he's mobilized, and they just want to keep moving right through the process, right through the winter, into next spring and summer. So I
All
would
right, if
ask that
you
the
go to sheet A4.01, you will see what will be left of the Henry House after they finish.
And that's,
What is left?
What?
We've already taken down the addition.
Well, I understand, but this is, I think this is
What was
the,
that page again, Al?
The last one.
A4.
Oh, second to last one, I'm sorry.
A401.
Yep. I actually think it looks better without the addition.
I like the addition,
Well,
but
it wasn't a bad addition, but it does look more prominent without the addition.
I'm not sure that the east elevation fenestration is the greatest that I've ever seen.
Well, no, I'd have to agree with you on that.
Can't you fix that a little bit, Ned?
East elevation.
You know, look at the
Hey.
east,
The
look
west-
at the east, one down in the right-hand corner.
But if you look at the west, it also has some issues. I mean, this is not a house that has a regularity of windows.
The west, I mean, that almost looks like a stained glass window.
It does
there.
rather, doesn't it? It might actually be. I'm not sure.
But the east elevation,
This part is
Right,
very
yeah.
nice.
yeah, and if that's stained glass, that's
The buttons
fine.
are
Right.
there, you know.
it's really,
I see them.
it's all essentially existing
Right.
conditions being,
Well, let's
I mean,
take,
it's-
We're
a-
just being
I
architecturally
know,
picky, that's all.
but it is
let's
historic.
take a look at
Yes,
the east.
yeah.
That is a stained glass, because that's the
1883.
stairway.
Yeah, well, I thought it might be a
1883.
stairway. What's going on here?
Has historic significance. We met
Nice.
early on with the
The old
Historical Commission
That's the old
with
addition.
respect to the
Those two.
removal of the wing. They were fine with
Is there a
that.
second stair? There must have been a second
But
stair.
the preservation of the main body of the house was important.
Does it
I
have
mean, that's
anything to do with
okay.
the Walter Baker's? I envision some major supervisor lived in these houses.
I think that, you know, didn't they
Related to
put
Andy's ice cream.
this
Oh, it was a
window
pantry.
in?
It's a
Okay.
pantry.
Didn't they put this window in when they put the addition on? They said we can't have,
A non,
well, no, the upper left-hand window, Ned, obviously, when they put the wing on, they narrowed the window.
yeah, they probably, they would have done,
What-
they
what
would have
elevation
closed
is
that
that?
out. The east
On the east
elevation.
The east,
The east,
oh, was-
on the,
You're
on,
right, because it should have
on
been
A401.
balancing this.
I think it looks
So there should have
beautiful.
been a window that balanced that.
right.
Yeah.
So do you have that now?
Upstairs there.
A bedroom.
I see your point.
Top of the stairs?
It's what's there.
But that would be good.
Yeah,
to,
actually, Alex.
That faces
You can see it on
the,
the plan.
River.
See?
no,
It's
that
blocked
faces
out.
the new 27-unit building.
And it's going to make for a nicer bedroom, because currently it is a mean little window in it, and this is going to be good. All right, they have, you know, the architectural team has done some work here.
Extensive work, it took us hours.
Right. Are we satisfied?
Yeah.
What? You are?
I
I'd
said
like you to change that window. Would you like them to do that, Emily?
It would be more
Ask
accurate.
the architect, unless the architect says this would be a terrible thing.
If you
Yeah.
can see it in the plan itself, that it was on A101, you can see that it was actually a filled-in window.
I will
And
discuss
if
it
the-
with the owner and with the architect.
If the architect, you know, says this
Suggest
is...
to them that there's been a strong recommendation from the planning board.
What was going on the first floor?
Actually, it really lightens up that room, too. The bigger window.
Oh, yeah, it'd be a much better room with that window enlarged.
No
So,
problem.
The other one looks okay. The other one's a kitchen window and then the little pantry window. That's probably fine.
All right. So, Ned, it seems to me that you need something to do. And so why don't you draft
An amendment to the...
no, it would be an addendum as opposed to an amendment, because an addendum to site plan approval, approving these things, and talk to the architect, and we'll deal with this next time. And I will review what you have, send it to me, I'll work with you. And with any luck, we'll have something that you don't even have to attend to get, because we know how much you
He says he
like.
loves coming here.
I love it here. My clients sometimes wish I didn't have to spend so much time here.
Your client would be delighted if you didn't have to show up.
All right.
So,
Now,
great.
thanks.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Sullivan, you've been waiting. Well, you actually haven't. You were part of the, but you have
You
been.
want to do?
He's going to be on for another
Okay.
project.
We have, Bill has some suggestions of as to how this plan can be made more lane-like. I have some suggestions that we really do want a lane.
We made a few changes since those, trying to get some curve into the roadway.
A little curve,
Thank you.
Yes, curvilinear would be nice.
look, a little curve.
Yeah.
Did you get one?
Quite a big curve, but it has some interest, doesn't it?
Yeah. I like that a lot better.
Yeah. Now, what happens along the boundary line here? In other words, if the neighbors need landscaping, Paul, if the
Yeah.
neighbors need landscaping, then we've got to give them a little more space for it.
Right, we could shift it over. I was actually talking to, Mrs. Metro was here earlier, and a couple of the neighbors are here tonight. Yeah, I just got this plan early today, so I didn't get a chance to make any change. But we could, on the home that's at 10 Vos Hill Road, he doesn't want any trees planted along the road. He prefers to have it open. But after we get close to 12 rows, we could shift the road towards Lot 2 and Lot 3 and create in a southerly direction and create more space to do plantings there, plant some trees.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think so, because we certainly, you're going to want McFarland's, the,
Yeah, he's here tonight, actually, Scott.
right, you're going to want them to be, you're going to want all those people to be happy.
Right.
So Paul, you're saying that you'll take this curve and then you'll curve it back in a little bit and then
Yes.
curve it back up to there?
Right.
So you'll have it a little bit more winding. That could, a winding lane, what
I
more
think,
could
you
you
know,
want?
I like the, I think that this is actually a nice conception. We'll see what, I think it's a nice conception. And
The ending is,
with planted space there, you can, that will be a real selling point, it would seem to me.
Is that an island at the end there?
yeah, there would be it would be used for drainage possibly and also a low plantings. So it's similar to Forest Lane that So emergency vehicles can come up and turn right over that and drive right over that, the end there. But it'll look more like a circular driveway rather than a big cul-de-sac.
A weir, is that a weir in here? To accept
Yeah,
water?
that would be for drainage and plantings, yeah, landscape island, like low plantings.
Well, I think that we're making progress here because it just is so much nicer than last time, but it still needs, you need more green between the lane and the neighbors.
Right, I agree.
Okay, and of course, when we get our location done, you're going to, we will, you don't want to put in a sidewalk, I see, and you were listening with care to what occurred at the last hearing.
I mean, my situation isn't as tight as it is with the drainage issue that they have at Center Brook, but, I mean, I suppose we could include one on the house side up to the end of Lot 2. Lot 2 meets Lot 3, but...
In other words, going from the boundary of Lot 3 down to...
Yes.
Do the other side streets in the area have sidewalks?
Vos Hill does, I believe Hillsview does.
Blueview does,
Obviously, like
Robbins does.
Perkins Lane, and then there's a private lane above it, west of it, that you can see Norman McLeod lives. But that doesn't have any sidewalks, I believe, but
That's one house.
there's 3 on that lane.
You've got Adams and you've got Haggerty.
No, I'm talking about the other lane that's up here above that, too. That has 3 houses on that lane.
But not
But-
Perkins, the other one,
Perkins doesn't have a sidewalk, no.
or one house.
Right, it's only, yeah,
Well, in any event, let's create more green space and see what it looks like. And then we'll think about waivers. We're not going to do any more waivers tonight. We're not going to do any more.
We're all out of waivers, Paul. You should have been here earlier.
We're out of steam
Lucky
on
you.
waivers. Yeah, so I think that your roadway is 18 feet. You've got 20 feet.
18, I believe.
Under Hemingway Lane,
It'd be
it
a
actually
12-foot at
says,
the,
but 18 feet, I think, is the new normal.
I think the 30 feet that it says there is the
Well, right of way?
right-of-way.
Oh,
So we'd
okay.
be having a waiver
Oh,
on that?
so yeah, I'm not sure that, well, we'll have to move the roadway and we'll see how wide the right-of-way has to be.
sure.
I mean, if there were a sidewalk going to go in, it would have to be, and there are no drainage plans here yet, right?
No, we're trying to get a sense of the shape.
Well,
of
no,
it.
you want to know what it's going to look like before you drain it. Okay, is anyone here who wants to be heard on this? Come on up and share with us.
Paul's going to get upset with me, because I know he's worked hard on this, but I've only lived there all my life on Vos Hill. I bought what used to be Tony Brando's nursery. I do not want a street in my backyard. I know it's not in my backyard. There's already a roadway on the other side of the property. That's
Who are you?
Eleanor Metro,
Thank you.
12 Vos Hill.
Thank you.
And I'm exhausted. I've been at work since 7 this morning. I was here at 7 o'clock and ended up going home and watching this on TV, and then ran over to come now, and all the doors were locked.
What did you do? You
I
waited
just
for
banged
someone
and
to
banged, and
exit.
finally someone came downstairs and he opened the door.
Oh, well, welcome.
But meanwhile,
Well, this is.
there's a roadway on the other side already. It just doesn't make any sense to put a roadway behind. So now we're gonna have Vos Hill Road in the front, and whatever, I don't know why he's calling it Hemingway either. That's way down. Hemingway Woods, is it Hemingway Woods? It's, well, anyway. That's what I just disagree with. And as far as drainage goes,
I think it's Hemingway Drive, isn't it?
oh, Hemingway,
It's-
whatever,
it's-
whatever.
Yeah.
This
There's
would be
a
very
Hemingway.
confusing.
But Hemingway Woods is
Hemingway
Right.
Lane.
Hemingway Lane or Hemingway Woods, too.
No,
It's
I
down
understand,
further.
but down at
Is there a
where
Hemingway
Milton
Pond as
Muse
well?
is.
But it's a nice name, I don't care about that. I just care about not having a roadway behind all our yards, because this is what's gonna happen. I
Well,
told him, he said it'll never happen, but it will. There is a driveway that comes down behind the other houses on our street. I know that's eventually gonna be a complete throughway, and people will be driving back and forth, even though it's a private way, please. I've lived there all my life. Where the Merricks used to live, we drove up and down that road constantly.
you are an important abutter. There is no question that you are a very important abutter.
I am, I've lived here too long. But I know that, and the water thing, that's another thing. There was a house up on, I don't know if it's Perkins Lane, well, where are we here? Well,
Here you are here.
I'm here, but it's up over here somewhere. As soon as they finished building that house, all the water changed coming around. Now, my house has got French drains all around it, but you can see the problem. My garage gets flooded now. My next-door neighbor, she says the water, instead of coming down into the backyard and draining and all, it goes down between his house and hers and goes flowing down her driveway. Her driveway looks like a flood zone sometimes. This is all changed just because of one house being built up there. And it's all springs. Everything that we are on is just all springs. So if it's not diverted right, it's going to be a mess for us.
Well, I
With a
would.
driveway right behind my backyard.
What our instructions to the potential developer were, consult the abutters, we said.
Well, he has.
Oh,
You know, and actually, I've been so busy, I haven't been around enough to think about it, and I talked to him either yesterday or the day before, I can't remember. He's been trying to get a hold of me so I can look at the plans, and I just haven't been around, I've been all over the place. Anyway, finally, last night,
you looked.
I started thinking about it, and I thought, I don't want cars going up and down, I don't want driveways, I don't want to see, we've had privacy there for 67 years. Why would I want, I mean, okay, if a house has to go in there, anything is better than what Chuck Cassano did to that property. I also resent the fact that he's going to profit out of it, because he's made hell for us. Took me and Peter Ashtian 5 years to get this town to put a cease and desist on him. He was using it as a dump. Until he was using a, what do you call those things that you throw in and they cut?
Compactor?
No.
Oh, a chipper.
A chipper. Let's see, what was the guy's name that was the engineer here? I can't remember.
Paul Cantor?
No, before him.
Before him?
Before Paul
Oh,
Cantor.
Paul Cantor, no, or maybe after him. He was from Hingham. I don't know, he's not here
You
anymore.
work for the
engineer.
town?
Yeah. I've got all the paperwork
Oh,
at
wow.
home. I
Okay.
can't. But anyway, we had been working with him for 5 years. Finally, one day, I called him up screaming bloody murder, and I told him, get your ass up here, because you've got to see what's going on. My grandchildren were in the backyard playing, and chips like arrows were hitting them off the head, hitting them. I'm lucky that they didn't get into one of their eyes. When he saw that, that's it. That's when he said, okay. Because the variance didn't allow for a chipper. My father signed the variance for Tony Brando. It was strictly for a nursery. And this guy just used it as a dump. We've got weeds. Weeds. We've got tall trees now in the backyard that were weeds, little weeds that he never cleared the property.
I don't think the planning board is going to be enthusiastic about this plan without your being a little more enthusiastic.
Got passion. And, you know,
Right.
I'm passionate about this area. Plus, I had 4 reindeer last Christmas living in there. I had a red fox. I have pheasants who still come back and perch on the fence because they were born there. I hate to see all of that disappear. It kills me. That's the problem with this town now. We're building up so much. It's like,
Well, this
come on, I want space.
this is a very discretionary development, which means that if the abutters aren't happy, the developer is definitely not going to be happy.
Well, he knows I'm not happy about it anyway. I told him that a long time ago.
Well,
I told him I'd like to see horses out there. I want somebody to build one nice big house and have a corral, have a barn and horses or something. I don't know. Just make it, just not, I just hate the thought of houses
now,
there.
The idea here was, this is not a plan, these lots are too small. They don't meet the zoning, and
Exactly, that's another thing.
Well, I can't imagine that if this plan were to advance and you were to come to the hearing, that the planning board would feel constrained to do anything other than deny it. I think that if Mr. Sullivan is to make some music here, he's going to probably have to think about what he can do for you.
Well, I don't want to hear threats like low-income housing and that kind of stuff, because that doesn't fly with me. So, you know, if the houses aren't going to go in, maybe low-income housing will go in. Well, boo to that. That won't happen. Not while I'm still alive. So get that right off the plate now.
Well, that's not our plate.
Okay, well, that would be...
All right. I do think, I mean, I'm willing to be corrected by anyone on the board, but this is not a conforming plan, and if the principal abutter, or one of the principal abutters, is as
There's 4 of us
as
who do not
passionately
want.
unhappy as you are, I don't see that.
Well, there are 4 of us who are unhappy with it, but I just have the loudest mouth.
4 of you? You mean everyone on Bose Hill Road?
4, none of them want to see homes or things built. I mean, they want to see something better than what's there, obviously.
Oh.
But not,
All right, well, that's
You and the other 3?
yeah.
You've
Thotron, me, Kathy Duggan, and Scott.
All right, now, thank you. Thank you. We're going to hear from, are you a Bose Hill Road person? Come on up and share with us.
I'm Scott McFarland. I live at 26 Bose Hill. And initially, when this plan came out, I was in support of the initial idea of developing the property.
Yeah.
However, I went to the Board of Appeals meeting last month, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And I saw the newest plan, which changed the roadway from the Perkins side to the side abutting our property. And this completely changed my view, and I'm completely against the plan as it stands now with the private way behind the 4 lots on Bose Hill Road. Our lots are small, they're 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
That would basically just sandwich us between Bose Hill and New Lane. The back of my house right now is very private. It's nice, I have a nice deck. and I understand, obviously, something's gonna be built there eventually, but I don't wanna be staring at a street in the front of a house with house lights, because that means I'll have the front of the house in front of me, front of the house in the back of me. And I don't understand why I can't be on the Perkins side. I don't understand why it's changed from Perkins to behind our house. It just seems ridiculous to be sandwiched between two streets, so.
Well, the whole point of this plan is that even if the planning board were to approve a street, which I certainly would not be prepared to approve a street unless the neighbors were agreeable to it, but then they would have to go back to the Board of Appeals and get a variance on the size of the lots, and there's nothing special about these lots which would entitle them to a variance under the law. And the way these things work, if abutters say no, the Board of Appeals is highly unlikely to do anything. So a two-step process, both of which are discretionary calls. So I think that the developer has to work on Perkins Lane if he's really going to think about doing anything on this land. I just don't see that there's any future at all for Hemingway Lane as it's shown here, with the abutters opposed.
I just want to mention too, I spoke to Catherine Duggan last night, who wasn't able to come tonight, and she's in agreement with us that she doesn't want the Hemingway Lane directly behind her home either.
All right, so if they can work something out with respect to Perkins Lane, we can revisit this, because it still would require the same process, but it might have, well, it would need the support of the Adamses and the Haggertys if it were to be on Perkins Lane, I think.
Well, they're set back far enough that they wouldn't even know.
Well, I mean, that's another day. This, I don't think, does the planning board agree that this plan really needs to go back to the drawing boards?
Yeah. For one thing, if you look at the trans property, that's lot 37 right on Blue Hill Avenue, they would have roads on 3 sides of their property. So that's very little privacy for anyone.
Traffic peninsula.
Yeah, that really would be. So with this significant opposition from neighbors.
Yeah. It's,
there'd be no way to
okay,
justify
Paul, I think that you've got a good flavor of what's happening here. I don't think the planning board is not going to, the plan as currently constituted is going nowhere. Okay. Now, I understand that. I think that we're done.
No, we have one more thing.
Like what?
Knights of Columbus.
Oh, we've got, going to discuss, are you the new owner? All right, that's fine. What are you?
Good evening again, Ned Corcoran. I am joined by Michael Moxley, who is the new owner of the Knights of Columbus property, and Tim Sheehan, who is his architect.
Okay.
We have a brief sort of overview discussion, and it is, pay attention to him, I guess.
While they're doing this, I was working in another town, and this one planning board has screens set into their table.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, because they are all looking at it. They've
Right,
got the screen behind them for the audience, and then little screens set into their table.
So, Mr. Moxley has recently purchased the Knights of Columbus property, which is on the corner of Thatcher, Laurel, and Brook Road. The actual address is Thatcher. And, oops, And so, series of photographs that show existing conditions. This is the Knights of Columbus Hall as you look into the property from Thatcher Street with the house on the property. It's a 16,000 square foot lot approximately, 2 buildings, both old, both in really pretty bad shape.
Is the house on the left, Ned,
House-
that's part of it too?
That's part of it. So that's existing. There's the existing house on the left. Another view of the house. Closer up of the front of the Knights property. That's looking down to the left, towards the rear of the property on the left side of the Knights building. This looks at the side of that same side of the Knights building from the rear corner of the lot. And that's a little further back, looking at the rear of the house on the right, and on the left is the Knights building, or closer of the Knights building. And that's also the Knights building, that's the rear of the Knights building. So, old, in pretty tough shape. This is the existing site. So, the purpose for coming here, and I appreciate to be here, is that Mr. Moxley has a plan to redevelop the Knights building into 6 3-bedroom condominium units, eliminate the house, and provide parking in front. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago at the library with neighbors and abutters to explain it. There was general positive feeling about the outcome. Some concerns about parking we were showing at the time. 13 parking spaces, we're now adding a few spaces, we're showing 16. So the next is a site plan as it was originally proposed, discussed that night. The property abuts the Milton Food Mart, which is on the Brook Road side of the house, of the property. And historically, some of the parking area on the Knights property has been used for customers of the Food Mart. And presently, their dumpster is located on the Knights parking lot. That will cease to exist, but we do have a parking plan that accommodates some of that flow. And that was a concern for the neighbors who thought if there's not enough parking on site, or we don't somehow work to accommodate parking for the Food Mart, then that would spill onto Thatcher and Laurel and other streets. So this is a newer site plan. We have 16 parking spaces. There are 8 immediately along the property line by the Food Mart, and 8 facing out towards Laurel. Unfortunately, you can see 2 lots on the easterly side, long, narrow lot, and then a rhombus-shaped lot. Those are owned by the same people. There's a house on the rhombus-shaped lot, and we've approached them about the notion of acquiring at least the long, skinny lot. But as of now, nothing's in play, and it's not clear that anything will be. If there were, then we could take advantage of that lot to have an exit from the parking area, so an easier flow of travel. But it's a 20-foot wide opening into the site, plenty wide for ins and outs, with 8 parking spaces proposed along the property line, and then 8 facing out towards Laurel. That would be 16 for 6 would be a little more than 2.5 spaces per unit. We would propose to deed 1 space to each of the unit owners in a parking sharing plan that would be similar to what we've done with 36 Central and with the overlay, properties in the overlay down at Wharf Street. So there would be a deeding of 1 space to each unit, and then a sharing of other spaces between the unit owners and the customers of the Food Mart. This is the elevation as you face from Laurel Road. This is the easterly side. The proposal is to add about 8 feet to the end of each end of the building. Building actually is structurally very sound. It has all steel members inside. And so the steel members lay out in such a way that each of the bays accommodates one townhouse. So the townhouse, 3 stories each, first floor. Then this is a view from Thatcher Street, facing in. This is what's now the front of the building. So the front would change completely. There's a small deck in front. We'd add about 5 feet to the height of the building to bring it up for a 3rd floor. This is the south elevation looking back towards Laurel, and then thought I had, I don't have on here elevations for the rear side. There are, so this is the existing and a proposed section. You can see where the existing height is now at 30 feet. We would propose to go to 35 feet. And from this elevation, 5 of the units would have a sort of a roof, a 3rd floor deck, sort of set in, so that each, and then no deck for the one on the right. First floor plan shows some dining, kitchen, living area. Second floor plan, 2 bedrooms and bath. 3rd floor is a master bedroom suite with master bath, and you can see the deck there. The project requires a number of variances. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use. It's a mix of a single-family residence and an institutional use on the property. It requires a use variance to allow multifamily on the lot. It requires setback relief from the side yard line, the rear yard line, in order to use the existing building. The existing building is 3.5 feet. The length of the building is 3.5 feet off of that side lot line. So if you look at the proposed site, the first proposed site plan, just for example, we need relief off of that side yard line. We need relief off the rear yard line so that the corner of the building would be 20 feet. It's required 30 feet. We need height because it would be 3 stories. So we need a relief on the 3rd story, not a 2.5 story, it's 3 stories. We need relief for the number of units. And obviously we need an approval of a parking plan. So we started with the neighbors. We're going to the Historical Commission Monday to discuss the demolition of the single-family residence. It is predates 1919, so therefore is subject to their review to determine whether or not it's of historical significance. We don't think it is, but we need to have that conversation in order to either address the demo delay or ask them to waive the demo delay. And then we will be filing jointly, similar to what we did with the Hill House and the Sullivans, is we'd be filing for the variances with the Board of Appeals, open a hearing with the Board of Appeals, come back to this board to begin site plan approval. We'd ask the board to render determination that if variances were granted, then site plan approval could be achieved, and then we would close on that side. We'll be before the Board of Selectmen as well, either next week or at the meeting on the 17th, and we'll be filing as soon thereafter as possible. So I wanted to present it to you, give you an opportunity to at least see it. If you had any preliminary questions or concerns, we could address those as we begin to move forward. At the end of the day, we think it is a significant beneficial reuse of an existing structure. Right now, it is a property that does not pay property tax in town, and will generate about $50,000 in net new revenue to the town in terms of property tax. And questions?
Couple of questions. yes. First of all, I know it's on or near a couple of bus routes. How far away is it walking distance from Mattapan Station? Is it quarter mile, half mile?
It's not far, it's maybe
About a third of a mile.
Third of a mile? Okay, that's about what I
We guess
thought.
in between here.
Yeah, and second of all, I mean, the building's existing, so there's not much you can do about it. I'm not normally a fan of parking in front of the building along the street. Is there any way you can soften that parking field with landscaping from the street
Yes,
side?
in fact, if you.
I could see, it's tiny up there. I could
Tiny
sort
up
of
there.
see a few, but I would want to double check.
There's significant existing significant trees on the lot,
Right.
and those will substantially remain. Others will be filled in. We will come back with a better considered landscape plan. There was some consideration to moving the parking down approximate to the building, but there was some suggestions from some neighbors that they would rather see the parking closer with that sort of a green play area that would be set back, you know, for children.
Right.
Particularly be set back away from Thatcher Street, away from the activity that takes place around the entrance to the food mart. And it would be, you know, the parking area could. One other thing I did forget to mention is that the property is currently served by septic. It's an old septic system that's going to be eliminated, and it'll be put onto town sewer and water. So that'll be an improvement itself in terms of just the overall site.
All right, well, we're going to, yes.
I went to that meeting with the neighbors. And I guess I have my mother lives diagonally across from this, so I've seen this the entire time growing up. I'm one of the ones that would prefer that where that play yard in the back becomes part of the parking, and that you take more of that green and put it on the front. It's one of those gateway points that when you drive through this area, I'm looking at a big parking lot versus having a more prominent lawn in that area, and push the parking to the back where the parking isn't seen as much. I hear the part about the playground for the kids who might live there, but push it to the back, push it, you know, squeeze some of it. And I understand the issues with the neighbor on Laurel Road, but I'd say push very hard on that one, because adding that to it, you will be able to attain the parking, moving the parking in front of the building and making that corner a more prominent green space, and therefore you would see the building, because right now you're going to drive by, you're going to see the cars. You're not going to see the building. If you make that green, you're going to see the building first, not the cars.
We can.
And I understand the issues of trying to get that piece next door, but I think it's one of those.
Yeah, and you know, we can play with different site plans and see how that lays out. There's give and take on both sides of that. There's good pieces on both sides of that issue, and we can work that and come back. When we come back with a more mature site plan, we'll have some.
Have you talked to the store about moving the dumpster to the other side?
We have not yet talked to the store about moving it, but that conversation will take place. In fact, I'm not even sure they need a dumpster if they take advantage of recycling and other things. Their volume of trash may not be as great.
I think from the smell that goes by there in the summertime, they need to do something with it. I think Mr. Moxley will agree to that one.
But this is the wonderful thing about variances, in that they're discretionary, and so the variance granting body gets to be able to specify all kinds of things that might not otherwise be specifiable. So we look forward to working with you on this. And was that a motion you were thinking about?
I need 30 seconds before you do. I know. We have a housing production plan sitting that I brought to you in July. And one of the things you didn't want to do is to take the time and try to find the appropriate areas that we'd put affordable housing. We have to do that. We're at that point that we need to file the housing production plan. A housing production plan needs to be signed by both the planning board and by the Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen are ready to take and do their thing, but they're waiting for a little bit of, where's the planning board?
Let them
We
do their
need to
thing
do-
first, then we'll,
We need to do two
Maybe.
things before that.
let them, yeah, then we'll.
One is we need to identify parcels.
Yes.
And the other is, thank you, Ned. And the other is we need to have the public forum where all of this gets discussed before we can come to any sort of final plan.
And we're going to make some site selection criteria.
Right.
Which
So what I was going to suggest is that we should start by looking at all the town-owned parcels and having that mapped out for us. Not individual property owner parcels, but let's just start and see what the town actually
We can
owns.
look at them.
Yes.
But we still have to know how we are going to judge them.
I agree, and we need
And
to
we need
talk about
some-
that.
And we need some public input on it.
Right. But at least we can have a map of all the town-owned parcels, which I know our GIS guy can do. Let's start with that, and then let's start getting this conversation going, because we're falling behind on the
I just got
HPP.
my flu
but
shot this afternoon.
I had thought that when we left this matter last, that we had actually
One more
made
minute.
clear that we needed
Take
these
tomorrow
things.
off.
We had done, I
Half a day.
thought, but I don't know what happened to it after that.
The
So.
translation was lost.
Faulty, yes. Ed, were you making a motion? I believe you were making a motion.
I'll make the motion.
All
right, what's your
all
motion?
in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Yeah.